Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, kings and queens. How you doing today? How's everyone hanging? It's a bit of a day. Ugh. Woke up this morning and saw what the president was tweeting. Crazy shit. Talking about how he's gonna destroy a whole civilization. Making huge threats against Iran. It's pretty cringe, pretty gay, pretty yikes, as they say, okay? Yikes, I think is the appropriate term. Disgusting, gross, whatever, evil, whatever you want to use. Um, really bad. And of course, like clockwork, the left is blaming Democrats for it. Saw Hassan out there screaming for Democrats, why don't you do anything? You need to do something. Well, you know what? Maybe if you'd helped us get into power, we might have been able to. Might have had power to stop or not do this, right? But since you didn't, it's kind of on you, frankly. Anyway, we'll get to that, I'm sure, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go. But today's main topic that I had planned in advance. So last week we read an article. Some of you were here for it, some of you weren't, called Yes, All Jews. And I found it gross and anti-Semitic, and I wanted to call out the people who were defending it. And there were people, and I showed them on my screen, right? Like people running cover for this, okay? And Dooby jumped in, and he said he wanted to have a conversation with me, a debate with me, about whether or not this was anti-Semitic or not. So that's what we're going to do today. So buckle up, boys and girls. Should be a fun discussion. I'll just bring him on and we'll get to it. How's that, gang? Hello, we're live.
Hello.
Just making sure that you know that you are being recorded, that everything is there.
Yeah,
so.
that's okay. Do you want the frog?
Yeah, I mean,
Mister.
frogs
Okay.
frogs get the views, okay?
Okay. Yeah, frogs get all the ladies.
Is that I don't think a lot
That's
of
what.
my
That's
audience
why
is
it exists.
ladies,
Yeah.
to be clear, but I could be wrong.
Well, I mean, you can convince them that if they kiss it, they might turn into a princess or whatever. However the fuck that story goes. So it works sometimes.
Maybe. I think that if they kiss you, then you turn into a prince. I think that's how that story goes, but I could be wrong. It's been a while.
Yeah, maybe one of those things.
Anyway, let's just kind of get to it. So kind of set the stage for us here. You called in last week and wanted to talk about the article, and you said it wasn't anti-Semitic. Give us your thoughts then.
So I'm just gonna lay this out like as simply as possible, right?
Okay.
To avoid getting bogged down. But my position is that, like, well, first off, can you define anti-Semitism? Like, when you say anti-Semitism, or you think it's anti-Semitic,
Sure.
like, what do you mean?
I like personally the Jerusalem Declaration on Anti-Semitism that was made on in 2021. And they go through, and it's a very simple one. Anti-Semitism is discrimination, prejudice, hostility, or violence against Jews as Jews or Jewish institutions as Jewish. And there's several guidelines that it goes through, right? Like, so you can criticize or oppose Zionism or Israeli policies harshly. That is not anti-Semitic, according to this definition. But if you essentialize or make sweeping negative generalizations about Jews as a group or hold Jews collectively responsible for Israelis' actions, that is anti-Semitic. So that's the definition I use.
Okay. So I'm totally fine with
Do
just
you agree
using
with that definition broadly? I mean,
broadly, yes,
okay,
I
where
do.
would you disagree, I guess?
Um, I guess it'd be in the framing, right? So for example, if I were to say that all Catholics have a responsibility to target or to tackle the systemic abuse that was happening in the Catholic Church, which was a very common thing. It's going around about Catholics. The Catholic community needs to target this or speak out against this. And if they didn't, they were told to be like complicit because their silence was complicity. Very similar thing happens with Muslims after a terrorist attack, right? Muslim leaders are called to speak out against it, to condemn it, yada yada. And if they don't, this is taken as complicity in some way, right? So I think that this kind of like demand for some sense of like collective responsibility for a political ideology or the actions that arise because of a political ideology. This isn't really attacking the group for being the group or attacking something inherent about the group itself.
So
But it's more there's an issue. It's more that hey, there is an issue within your community, and because you are part of this community, you have a responsibility to tackle that issue. Like I
so
think
do
that
you,
is what she's doing,
yeah.
and I think that the way that the framing of holding Jews collectively responsible thing, I think that if they were to just hold to those words themselves, it'd be a double standard that we don't apply to other communities, which would also be anti-Semitic.
So you wouldn't consider, just to be clear, like, so let's use the terrorism example that you brought up with the Muslim community and things like that. You wouldn't think it to be Islamophobic or anti-Muslim to demand that every Muslim in a community, like say Dearborn, Michigan, for example, condemn the actions of a terrorist group across the world. Like, so, say, uh, the Houthis do something horrific, right? Or Hezbollah does something horrific, kills a bunch of U.S. Marines, something like that. And people go around to random Muslims in Dearborn, Michigan, and demand that they take a stand on this, right? You don't see any problem with that? You don't think that would be Islamophobic? I do. I think that would be very Islamophobic. I think that would be very anti-Muslim. I think that would be bigoted in a real way. Some guy in Dearborn, Michigan, has nothing to do with Hezbollah or the Houthis. They have no real connection to them. They happen to share a religion, right? They happen maybe even to be from the same region, but that doesn't give us the right to demand that someone who has no real connection apologize or be held responsible for or even condemn, right? They would be justified in telling anyone who told them that they needed to condemn the actions of a group they're not connected to fuck off. Do you disagree with
Yeah,
that?
yeah, I think that this is a misunderstanding of the Houthis, even right. So the Houthis aren't committing terrorism, quote unquote. I don't think most of it is terrorism actually. Because of Islam, they're a militia group in a region of the world that is acting for political reasons, not because of Islam, right? They have
They
regional interests that
claim, though.
they're fighting for
They
and
claim they are.
defending, right?
They say they
Well,
are.
hold on. Like
They
Pete
claim they
Hegseth
are
says
in a lot
that
of
we're
cases.
fighting this war for God. Is that true? No,
Is
it's not true, right? So
hold on.
the United States is not fighting a war for Christianity, even if Pete Hegseth says so, right?
I understand that, which is why it would be weird to demand a Christian who's fucking in South America to condemn, right, what Pete Hegseth claims he's doing in the name of God.
Yeah,
Even though they're both
I
Christian, even I don't know if I'd actually call Pete Hegseth an actual Christian, but that's another debate, right?
right.
But like, you would understand how it would be problematic, it would be bad, it would be bigoted to demand all Christians everywhere condemn that, something that is done in their name, but they have no connection to.
No, I think they should. I think you should encourage Christians to condemn it. If their religion is being used to justify atrocities, I think people who hold to this religion are responsible in some way for calling it out and cutting that rod out of the community. I would say the same about Christian nationalism, right? So if there are evangelical churches where Christian nationalism is a problem and it's a massive issue growing in Christian communities in the U.S., I think it is a responsibility of these communities to police themselves and say, hey, that we are not part of this movement, and this movement is not Christianity. I think it's totally fine to say this, and I don't think it's bigoted in any way. I think inter-community critique, intra-community critique is totally normal. It's something that happens across all other communities. I really don't understand why we'd have a specific carve out for religion or for Jews in this case.
So I think that intra community critique can be done in ways that are perfectly fine and perfectly valid. I don't necessarily, as a concept, think like if I was right, if I was to critique Mormonism or streamers, right, we'll use streamers as a group, right? I can call like I think streamers have been very negative in how they deal with the mentally ill, right? I think that they use them for clicks, for views, all these things. I think they exploit them in many ways. I think that streamers as a whole kind of do this, but it would be wrong of me to then hold an individual streamer who has not done this responsible in any way, shape, or form to demand that they renounce this kind of behavior. It would be putting a burden on them that they do not deserve and do not share because they haven't engaged in that behavior. They haven't done it. And I'm against collective punishment as a whole. And I think that what this article is calling for in a very real way is a collective punishment to Jews as a whole, to Judaism as a whole. I mean, it has, we can go through the quotes if you like, but it talks several times about how if a Jew wants the target to be off their back, they have to enthusiastically support the Al-Qasim brigades to praise the glory and miracle of October 7th, burdens that we would never put on any other group, or we should not put on any other group. And if they are to be put on any other group, we would rightly call them out as bigoted. But because for whatever reason Israel breaks people's brains, we think it's okay to call on some Jewish guy in Brooklyn and hold them responsible for what's happening in Israel. And they're not. They're simply not.
Wait, but what, this isn't true. I just gave you multiple examples where exactly this kind of structure is applied, and we have no issue with it. So white people, for example, when Obama said that all white people have a responsibility to tackle racism, when Biden said that racism is a white man's problem, right? I don't think they're like anti-white
Those were
bigots for
bigoted
this.
statements to make.
No, that's silly.
Why
would that
they
be a
were
bigoted statement?
There were facially bigoted statements today. To say that all white men carry the burden of racism is something that we have as a society largely begun to reject. We adopted it because we were crazy for some reasons, and we wanted to overlook that bigotry, but it is a form of bigotry. It is a form of racism, and it was rightfully called out by a lot of people. Even when my side does it, quote unquote my side, right? Even when Obama does it, even when Biden does it, those are bigoted, racist statements, and they should not be made.
Okay. So to be clear, you believe that when Obama and Biden said that there is a racism issue in the white community, there's a growing white nationalist issue in the white community, and because of because white people are also part of this community, they have a responsibility to call it out, to push it out of their community. You think that statement makes them bigots, makes them like anti-white?
I don't think that alone would do it. I think that when you start to hold them responsible if they don't, then it becomes a problem. So again, in this article, I think you're soft selling it. The author does not simply say all Jews have a responsibility to call out Judaism or to call out Israel for its actions, its genocide in Palestine, for its terrible behavior in a lot of other ways, apartheid, whatever, right? She goes much further than that. I'm going to read you a couple of these quotes. Okay. We Jews are the fascistic overlords, the vicious propagandists and funders, the militarized soldier settlers. Modern Judaism reflects terrorism, slaughter, blood, sadism, rape, and organ theft. Jews now dwell in and animate the age of a totalitarian Judaism. This is, on its face, an essentializing statement that we would not apply to any other group. Or if it is applied to any other group, we would absolutely call it out for being bigoted and racist and essentializing. So, for example, if Biden had said, we whites are the fascistic overlords, the vicious propagandists and funders, the militarized soldier, colonial settlers, right? Modern whites reflect terror, slaughter, blood, sadism, rape, and organ theft. Yeah, that would be fucking racist to say. That would be super racist.
Okay, so first off, what you're attacking right now is the harshness of the critique, right? Not the structure of the critique itself. So I agree that it's harsh. A lot of her language is very inflammatory, very bombastic. I wouldn't use some of the language she uses. That doesn't make it anti-Semitic. It doesn't make it like a bigot did.
No, no, it
What
does
it seems to
though.
me is that, hold on. So what she's actually doing in this article is identifying an issue within her own community and saying we are not doing enough to fight this issue, and because we're not doing enough, we are complicit, which is again the same structure that was used to say that all men have a responsibility to fight rape culture, for example. All white people have a responsibility to fight racism. All Catholics have a responsibility to fight systemic abuse in the Catholic Church. All Muslims have a responsibility to attack terrorist ideologies in their communities or jihadism in their communities. Like this is very similar to all these other. I mean,
No,
Jewish
again,
prophets, hold
there's a
on, like
difference
Jewish
in this. You
prophets
keep doing
were
this trick.
extremely critical of their community in way more inflammatory language than she used. Would you say that they're anti-Semitic because they call their community vipers? They called they called Israel a community of vipers.
A nest of
Is that
vipers. The
anti-Semitic?
problem
Yeah,
here
nest of vipers.
is the trick you're doing here, where you tried to kind of like
There's no
jump
trick.
from this is just harsh critique, and I think you jump over the other step that they are doing. They aren't just using harsh words to identify people who have engaged in behaviors that they find reprehensible. They are saying that all Jews are not only responsible to call this out, but responsible for it. And there's a substantive difference saying you have a responsibility as a member of a group to condemn X, Y, or Z. There's problems with that. I have problems with that. But she goes further than that. And she's not only says not only do you have a responsibility to call this out, but you're guilty of this. You're responsible for this, and you deserve to pay for this.
Do you think it was wrong to impose denazification on Germans after World War II?
No, I don't think it was wrong to impose
Why didn't that
denazi.
hold all Germans collectively responsible for Nazism?
I think that if they were like shooting people who hadn't done anything, then that's a problem, right? Or if they were calling on the death of people or to imprison people in Germany who had not engaged in any of the Nazi rhetoric, who had not participated in any Nazi rhetoric. Because, well, let me ask you this. In the denazification of Germany, do you think it would have been okay to demand an American German face that same denazification? Like someone who lived in America all their lives, hadn't even been to Germany, just happens to be of Germanic descent.
No, but I think that
Okay,
if
but
you try
that's what
to
she's
wait, hold
doing with
on.
the
No,
Jews.
really quickly. No, because what she's talking about isn't Israel itself. She's talking about Zionism, the ideology of Zionism. And if you were to look at I think there have been polls on this, and like over like 90% of Jews consider themselves Zionists, or consider that or support the existence of a Jewish state, right? So she's attacking that. Right, not just the state of Israel, but that ideology that she believes has taken over her community. Right. So if German Americans were supporting Nazism, then yeah, it would make sense to say that they have a responsibility to condemn Nazism. Right. If there was an
Okay,
issue with German Americans identifying as Nazis and supporting Hitler, then yes.
but
Right. But
here's a
go ahead.
problem with what you just said, though, right? You mentioned that 90% or whatever percentage I think you used, I think it was 90%, support the existence of a Jewish state. That does not necessarily imply support for what Israel is doing, or even support for Israel where it's at and how it exists now, right? I can support a Jewish state and also say, well, I think Israel's an ethno state. I think what they're doing is horrific and they probably should be disbanded. You can believe both things. These are not contradictory. Again, she's doing this thing where she conflates that anyone who's even neutral towards Israel or even condemns it but doesn't praise the rapes and murders that have been engaged against it is a Zionist. She calls you a Zionist, Dooby.
Yeah. So I don't think that she believes that there were rapes and murders on October 7th. So I read some of her other work. It seems like she doesn't believe. She thinks that's like a bullshit narrative pushed by Israel. And I think there's some strong evidence that that did happen. I do believe that there were rapes, of course, but I think it's also true that there were opportunists and liars who exploited that fact and exaggerated that fact to make money or to push like an anti-Palestinian narrative. So she doesn't believe that those things happened. I disagree with her. I think some of that did happen. I don't think there was like mass rapes, but absolutely some people were raped,
I
right?
think. Well, what
So
would you
so
call
looking at it from her,
someone? What would you
go ahead.
call someone who denied the Holocaust, who denied that Jews were being killed in camps in the Holocaust? What would you call that person?
I think there's far more evidence that the Holocaust happened than that there were like mass rapes on October 7th, which is the narrative that she's combating.
Okay. I think that you're correct technically that yes, there is more evidence on the Holocaust. Yes, that is true. But I think that there is compelling and damning evidence about what Hamas did on October 7th. There's video evidence that we have from multiple sources. Hamas videoed themselves doing these things. We have this evidence. It's strong. The UN has come out with reports detailing this evidence, and we can quibble on some of the details here and there, but I think that someone who still denies that Hamas killed and raped people on October 7th, that in and of itself is anti-Semitic in a big
Why?
way. Do you
Why?
disagree?
Yeah, why?
Okay, so
Like you
again, I'm going
using
to
the
refer
definition
to
that you
the.
brought up earlier.
Sure, I'm going to
Like, how
refer.
is that anti-Semitic?
Yeah, I'm going to refer to the definition we used earlier, right? Like when you were denying atrocities against a group, in this case, the Jewish group, again, combine that with the saying they need to be punished for their actions. It's a way to hold them accountable and to deny any kind of there is no wrong you can do against that group. And if you do a wrong against that group, we're going to cover it up for you. We're going to deny that ever happened. It's anti-Semitic in nature. Do you not understand that?
No, I think that you are pretending that she doesn't actually believe that these things didn't happen, and she's only saying that they didn't happen because she hates Jews. I think she actually doesn't believe they happened. And again, I think there's very strong evidence that at least the extreme claims of like mass rape on October 7th were not true. The beheaded babies thing, not true. Right. So it is true that there were lies floating around early on, and still today. There were people going around giving speeches to huge crowds of people that were later exposed to totally lied about their involvement and what they did and who they saved and all this kinds of shit. So I think it's totally reasonable to be like suspicious of that narrative. And if she believes that the narrative is totally made up, either because she hasn't seen enough evidence or because she's seen evidence of people lying about this, I don't think that's anti-Semitic.
I do not think that she would accept any evidence. And the reason I don't
You don't know
think
that.
that is because I think she is anti-Semitic. And the reason I think she is anti-Semitic is because she's essentializing all Jews, holding them all responsible. She's praising Hamas, the glorious Al-Qassam brigade, right? And Hamas, to be clear, has called for the death of all Jews, right? All of them, right? Globally.
Hold on. That's not
I'll read you some
accurate.
quotes.
No, you're
If
gonna
you
go back
like.
to like the 80s or something. But
From
like recent.
2019?
Okay, yeah, read the one from 2019
Sure.
because I know that recently, I think even like
You're
before and
7 million
after,
Palestinians abroad.
really quickly.
No,
I think
I'm gonna
before
read the
and
quote.
after. Well,
Just real quick.
let me finish my statement. I think before and after October 7th, there were like Hamas spokespeople saying that that their fight is not with Jews, it is with Israel. It is with the Zionist entity. Right,
Okay,
is
well,
they
here's
call it.
what Fathi Hamad, the senior Hamas official, said in 2019. He said, "You 7 million Palestinians abroad, there are Jews everywhere. We must attack every Jew on planet Earth." That's all of them, Dooby. We must
Okay.
slaughter and kill them with Allah's help. We will die while exploding and cutting the necks and legs off the Jews. We will lacerate them and tear them to pieces. Again, every Jew on planet Earth. It's fucking anti-Semitic.
Oh God. Yeah, I believe that this man wants to kill all Jews.
Yes.
I'm telling you that their official position before and after October 7th is that their fight is with Israel, not Jews.
Okay.
Like, that has been their stated position for fucking years. Again, before and after October 7th. I agree that this guy wants to kill all Jews. 100%.
That is their stated goal. Hamas's stated goal is to kill all the Jews.
Okay, that is this man's
They
stated
have
goal,
softened
not
some of
Hamas's
their
stated
official
goal.
language for propaganda purposes, but that is what they believe, and that is what they have said
That's not true.
over and over and over again. In official
think Hamas just
publication,
wants to fight Israel
Hamas
because
leadership
they're
has said
Jewish?
this. I'm going to quote you another one from 2023. This is Ghazi Hamad, a Hamas political official, and he says vowed repeatedly to annihilate Israel and continue October 7th style attacks time and time again until Israel is annihilated. In 2012, Sheikh Ahmad Bar says, "Oh Allah, destroy the Jews and their supporters. Oh Allah, count them one by one and kill them all without leaving a single one." They're anti-Semitic, Dooby.
Wick, do you realize what you're doing right now? So we both know.
What am I doing right now?
I'm going to tell you.
Quoting Hamas.
We both know.
And its
hold on.
officials.
We both know that if we were to just Google it, we would find countless quotes and speeches by Israeli government officials and Jewish leaders within Israel and here in the United States and politicians here in the United States openly advocating for the killing of all Palestinians. Right. So do you think it's like reasonable for me to say that because you support Israel, that means you're supporting a government that wants to kill all the Palestinians? And therefore you're a bigot.
I do not think
then why are you playing a double
is
standard?
reasonable because we have plenty of evidence that they haven't killed all Palestinians. However, we have evidence that Hamas, when they get the opportunity, will kill every single Jew that they can get their hands on. We have evidence of these things, right? And so again, like, I think that someone can support the idea of Israel and condemn the leadership of Israel. And I don't think that it's anti-Semitic to condemn Israel even, right? But we're not talking about just condemning Israel here. We're going further than that, and we're holding every Jew on earth responsible for Israel. And that's what makes us anti-Semitic.
Okay, Wick, I feel like your beliefs about Israel are clouding your thinking on this. Because to be clear, when people support Israel, right? So if a Jewish person says, "I support Israel," or you say, "I support Israel," you're not just supporting like a random ass nation somewhere on the planet. You're supporting a state that is actively committing ethnic cleansing, has been doing this for fucking decades now, by the way, is accused of genocide, very likely has committed genocide in Gaza, has a long history of human rights violations, rape, torture, murder of children, women, men that they've held in detention with no charges. They just passed a law, Wick, that allows them to kill specifically Palestinians, right? And not Jewish people, specifically Palestinians, death by hanging.
What kind of Palestinians?
Right? So you're
all
talking,
Palestinians? Hold on, no, let's talk about that law. What kind of
talk
Palestinians?
About the law. So Palestinians, they believe, have killed somebody.
Okay, so the death penalty for Palestinians. That is problematic, but you notice how you framed that?
Wick.
You notice how how dishonest that framing was? That you said, well, they're just going to
at
kill all
all.
Palestinians. The death to Palestinians law, right?
That isn't what I said either. I didn't say they want to kill all Palestinians or the death to Palestinians law.
You
said
just
made that up.
They passed a law allowing them to kill Palestinians.
That allows them to kill Palestinians, yes.
Yes, but that leaves out a lot of important context.
Oh, I'm sorry. Palestinians have been charged with a crime.
Something that is just not true.
Wait, Wick, do you think that law is okay?
No, I don't. I'm not supporting that
so
law.
Why?
But when we criticize something, it's important we be accurate how we criticize something.
I agree.
And therefore, when
Wick,
leave
but
out
also when you support something,
context
Wick,
to your criticism,
Wick, when you support something,
it feels dishonest.
Wick, when you support something, I think it's important to be specific about what you're supporting. And you and other people who support the existence of Israel in its current form, or believe in or support Zionism, are supporting a nation that is doing all the evils that I just laid out, right? And continue to do more evil, and not just in Gaza or the West Bank, but also in southern Lebanon right now, where they're openly ethnically cleansing the Shia Muslims. Where they're telling Christian and Druze leaders that to kick the Shia Muslims out of their community.
Because
you're supporting that
Palestine.
State. So
does that mean you support October 7th?
No, obviously not.
So because I support Israel, even though I don't, right? I just don't want to see it wiped off the face of the earth, right? Because I support Israel under that framing does not mean I support every single law they pass or what they do in Gaza.
What do you mean you support Israel? Like, what does that mean? Okay,
I think that the people of Israel have the right to self-determination and should have the right to self-determination, and that they shouldn't be forcibly excised from the area, nor should they be killed. I think Israel has a right, quote unquote, to exist. I don't like what it's doing in Gaza. I condemn it. I don't like how it's conducted itself during this war. I don't like how it's conducted itself prior to the war in many cases. But this isn't a conversation about what I support or don't support about Israel. This is a conversation where we are wondering if someone who, again, has no support for Israel, has no connection to Israel, who happens to be Jewish in California, has any responsibility for what Israel does or does not do. This article says that they do bear responsibility and that they are Zionists and that they have a target on their back. Okay? I condemn that language. It's essentializing. It's putting the responsibility for something someone did across the globe on someone who has no connection and they have no say in this, right? They have no responsibility here. They should not be condemned for it.
That's
They are
not
not
true.
guilty. They have not done anything.
Okay, but this isn't true because she explicitly lays out a way to escape this criticism, Wick, and that is
What is
to
that way?
commit to anti-Zionism and to fight anti-Zionism with your full chest, right? Not just be tepid about it, but to attack the institution of Zionism within the Jewish community,
We can
right?
read what she says.
To
I can
attack
quote it.
go for it.
So, genuine Jewish anti-Zionists unwaveringly support the total eradication of Israel and the greater Satan, America, the full land back without a speck of Zionist or Euro-American imperialist settler colonial control. This includes Jews supporting removing fellow Jews from Palestine while ensuring they don't do harm where they go further displace indigenous peoples elsewhere. So not only is she saying that unless you want to destroy Israel, destroy America, ethnically cleanse the Jews from Palestine, which by she means all of Israel, right? Gaza, West Bank, and Israel proper, right? And that these Jews are so dangerous that you have to be careful where you put them because they're going to just do it again because Jews are like that, right? That's what
That
she's
isn't what she says,
saying.
Wick. She doesn't say Jews are like that.
That is
So
obviously
so
the
the implication
implication
here,
of the
okay,
statement.
no, the implication is that if they leave the area, she doesn't want there to be a new Israel made, right? A new ethno state imposed on some other group of people, right? That is what she's saying. She's not saying that Jews just do this to people. She's saying our community has adopted and latched onto, I think she said that the ideology is latched onto the community, and we are not doing enough to fight this ideology, which is toxic and poisonous and genocidal and racist. And she thinks that every Jew has a responsibility to fight this thing. And if you do fight this thing, she's your ally. She's Jewish. I'm sure she doesn't think that she is is unsalvageable and she just needs to be killed or whatever the fuck. She believes that there are other Jews like her who are already fighting this evil, right? And she is calling on all Jews to fight this evil. And the way that a Christian pastor might call on all Christians to fight Christian nationalism, or a German leader might call on all Germans to fight Nazism. It's the ideology she's attacking, and she believes that this ideology is dominating her community and every institution in her community.
But the way she is attacking the ideology is to demand that people who are unconnected to that ideology, who have no responsibility for that ideology, be held responsible for that. $5, just real quick, from It's Vishy to say, I can't help but think Dooby may be anti-Semitic or just not care if people are. The last 3 paragraphs of that Substack is inarguably anti-Jewish. It's throughout the whole language from start to finish is collective punishment, essentializing it, and tying it intrinsically the actions of Israel to every single Jew on earth. And that is blatantly something we would never accept. Like, well, let me just ask you. If I wrote an article called Yes, All Palestinians and said all Palestinians have blood guilt for what Hamas has done on October 7th, they should all be forced to answer for it, no matter if they live in the West Bank, no matter if they live in Gaza, no matter if they live in America and have never seen Palestine at all. They are all guilty. They all have a target on their back. Yes, all Palestinians. You would call that bigoted, and you would be correct to do so. I am just saying that when she does this to Jews, it's the same thing and should be condemned equally.
Okay, this is interesting because that is a common critique of Palestinians that we hear from Zionists like you. which is that Palestinians need to attack the radicalism that's in their communities and in their population. They need to reject that radicalism. They need to lift up peaceful leaders and reject violence and all these things. They need to reject Hamas. They need to rise up against Hamas. And if they haven't done this, well, they're just not doing enough. And this is why it's okay for Israel to fucking bomb them. Like, that is your position. That is a position.
That is not my position.
That is
I've
absolutely
never
your position.
called on.
You don't think that Palestinians have a responsibility?
Who lives in fucking Dearborn, Michigan, who's never set foot on Palestine, who's never even talked about Israel, who's never even talked about Gaza, who doesn't really fucking care. They just play video games. I have never, not once, said that they are responsible in any way, shape, or form. I dare you to find me a clip of me doing that.
You were disconnected again from the reality of Zionist identification among Jews and of Jews who say that they believe in a Jewish state. Right. So if it were true that the majority of Palestinians, even in Dearborn, supported Hamas, for example, or supported radicalism or violence against Israel, or the total destruction of Israel and the killing of all Jews in Israel in some way, then it would be reasonable to say that, yeah, if you're not one of the people who supports this, because this evil is within your community, you have a responsibility to call it out and to cut it from your community. Right. So, and again, this brings me back to the German thing, because like the collective guilt standard was like it's what came out of the Holocaust. This was written by Holocaust survivors, or the Nuremberg laws, the denazification programs. This was applied to all Germans, regardless of their support for Hitler, because the standard was that all Germans were in some way. It was not applied to Germans
in America. Okay. It was not applied to Germans who lived in other countries. This denazification of Germany only applied to those who lived in Germany. What this article is doing, it's implying, it's not just implying, it's outright stating. It's outright stating that every fucking single one of the Jews who live on Earth are responsible, and they are simply not. That is a centralizing language. You would never expect it or accept it in any other context. I don't understand why this is so hard.
We have accepted it in other contexts. Like, it's like you have a specific carve out for Jews for some reason.
No, I would say this about Palestinians.
You're forgetting
I would
all
say
the
this
other
about
contexts.
whites. I would say this about blacks. I would say this about Muslims.
Do you think DEI,
I would say this about any other group.
Do you think DEI is bigoted?
Do I think DEI is bigoted? It can be, yes.
Do you think it is? Do you think anti-racist programs are bigoted?
It can be, yes. If you are saying that
in what cases is
black
not?
People, right, or that all white people, I should say, all white people need to step aside or to bear a burden because of something they did not do, that's a little bit bigoted,
that is,
right?
That is literally DEI. It's the idea that because white people have white privilege, which I'm sure you also think is bigoted, I guess, because white privilege exists within the white community, then all white people are generalized and essentialized, quote unquote, and that they are treated differently in hiring practices. That is DEI. That is exactly what you're saying. So you believe that it is bigoted.
You believe that
the concept of white privilege,
that every Jew has a target on their back.
Do you believe that the concept of white privilege? Okay, if you look at the context of that,
equivalent things.
If you look at the context of that, Whick, she's talking not. She's not saying they're going to be killed.
What context changes the meaning of it?
Okay, just read it.
Okay,
so when she's talking about the target on the back, the context, if I remember correctly, is like Nuremberg. Is like, hey, you're supporting political ideology. You need to be held responsible for supporting this political ideology.
Okay, so I'm going to read.
Hold on, wait, really quickly. And this is very similar, I think, to the way that you and Destiny and others talk about MAGA. Right? How they all need to be held responsible for supporting Trump. It's the exact same shit.
Whoa, hold on
which is another toxic ideology that you think the
want you to go back.
One second. It's another toxic ideology that you think the Republican Party itself and any Republican has a responsibility to cut out of their party.
I want you to go back and I want you to watch the discussions between me and Destiny on what we should do about MAGA. And I guarantee you that we have a very different opinion. I argue, in fact, that not all MAGA or Trump voters should be held responsible, and not even all Republican politicians should be held responsible for the actions of Trump. I explicitly argue this. So for you to say that my position is that we should essentialize and hold them responsible, and that's, again, forgetting that MAGA in and of itself is something you buy into. It's not something you're born into.
So
is
Zionism.
MAGA. So there's differences there, but you're just wrong on its face. So you're wrong to compare the two, and you're also wrong about my position here.
So again,
And
so
hold on,
Wick,
hold on,
Zionist. Okay, go
hold
ahead,
on.
read it.
Let me read the context of this target on the back thing. Okay, it says many will say the argument I put forth unfairly puts a target on Jewish people's backs. You're still missing the point. We support genocidal Zionism across the entirety of our faith. We put the target on ourselves and can take it off by ourselves by relinquishing genocidal Zionism and asserting principled anti-Zionism, but more fundamentally, we aren't the victims targeted by Zionism. We are the perpetrators of it. The real targets are those material placed on Palestinians by Israelis. This is, again, essentializing language. She's saying
Do you not? What does
all Jews
essentializing mean to you?
support genocidal Zionism across the entirety of our faith, and that's just not true.
Wick, what does essentializing mean to you?
Essentializing is when you say all Jews are X, or all blacks are or Y, or all whites are Z. That's essentializing. You're taking a group
Okay.
and you're saying every member of that group is the same. They're essentially the same.
Okay. So if I were to say that Democrats hold liberal values, right? Do you think that would be essentializing?
Can you say that one more time?
Democrats hold liberal values.
No, but you have to hold liberal values to be a Democrat. It's not an ethnicity, and these are different things. It's an ideology that you buy into. If I said all Zionists believe in Zionism, then yes, that would be correct. But if I said all of a certain ethnicity believed in Zionism, that would be incorrect. You understand the difference?
Okay, but Wick, okay, no, because the
You
vast
don't
majority of
understand the
Jews,
difference between these
I'm
things.
getting there, Wick, because the vast majority of Jews are Zionists. And in fact, what you read out, she specifically says that if you want to, they want to take the target off their backs, and again, she's talking like in the context of like Nuremberg trials, that they need to reject Zionism. They need to relinquish Zionism and adopt principled anti-Zionism. Right. So she's specifically saying, hey, this isn't inherent to who Jews are. The Jews can change. My community can change and can be better. This is how to be better. So this is not we're evil because we're Jews. Again, the entire push of the article is this toxic evil ideology has attached itself to our community, and all of our institutions are in support of it, and like 90-something% of Jews are in support of this thing, and it's our responsibility to cut that evil out. So this is her specifically saying that there is a way out because Jews are not intrinsically evil, because this is not how our community should be or has been. In fact, she talks about like Jews historically and how they've attacked exactly this kind of concept and exactly this kind of evil. Right. So she is not saying that the Jewish community is evil because they're Jews. She's saying that the Jewish community has adopted an evil ideology and she wants them to kick it out.
Okay, I'm going to read you some quotes here. Okay. Boom. Let me get there. I have come to have tremendous disdain for my people, the evil we have wrought, and the demons we have become. Our craven hypocrisy, our Holocaust hand-wringing, our selfish dissociation, both sides in catatonic inaction, feeble sign-waving, condescending condemnations, walling victim complex, self-indulgent betrayals, brazen self-centeredness, exploitative careerism, blood and soil racism, liberal cowardice, empty platitudes amidst mountains of Palestinian corpses. Again, she's making no distinction between Zionists, right, in her community or her people, and in the Judaism as a whole, calling them demons, that they have become demons. That is an anti-Semitic trope, that when you say all Jews are responsible for collectively for the actions of some Jews, that is classic anti-Semitism. It's something that she does again and again throughout the article. She links Jews to the forces of evil, right? And again, not just Zionists, right? Not just people in Israel, right? Not just Israel supporters, but all Jews everywhere because they happen to be born Jewish.
No, look, that's not true. Because
She's
she
not saying you
acknowledges,
don't have. You
Wick, she
understand. You don't have
acknowledges,
to say
oh
that.
God,
She doesn't
Wick,
have
she
to say that
acknowledges that
there's
they're
some
anti-Zionist
gene,
Jews, doesn't
right?
she?
That there's some gene or something
Wick,
wrong
doesn't she
with Jewish
acknowledge that they're
blood to
anti-Zionist
be
Jews?
anti-Semitic. She can. If you are saying that every Jew everywhere has been indoctrinated into this, they have no choice, right? That is an anti-Semitic thing to say. It's wrong and anti-Semitic. It's saying that all Jews have this collective responsibility, and that's just not true.
Okay, Wick. Does she acknowledge it or not that they're anti-Semitic? I'm sorry, anti-Zionist Jews?
Yes, but she says to be
Okay,
anti-Zionist, you have to commit to destroying America, commit to destroying Israel, uh, praise October 7th. The bar she sets is so astronomically high that it is
irrelevant, Wick.
unreasonable to demand that any
Irrelevant.
Jewish person meet that bar. It sets an impossible standard, and
It's not
it is
impossible.
an
Do you
impossible
think she'd call
standard.
herself? Do you think she'd call herself a like a Zionist demon?
She might, depending on her day.
Don't
She's
be
kind of
silly.
fucking crazy.
No, okay, now you're being silly. So
I,
obviously
I,
no,
I, I don't think I'm being
obviously
silly.
no, because she supports all the shit that she says you need to support to be an anti-Zionist or a principled anti-Zionist, to escape the critique that she's leveling at the Jewish community and Jewish institutions. So seems to me that she does believe that Jews are capable of doing this thing, this very difficult thing. I agree that she's laid out, right? And I don't agree with the destruction of America, obviously. Right? I don't agree with the ethnic cleansing of Jews from Israel, but you're mistaking bad like policy positions with like ethnic hatred, and it is not the same thing.
I think that you're right. Policy positions and ethnic hatred are not the same thing, but she does engage in ethnic hatred. She hates
Where
Judaism because she believes it's become corrupted and poisoned in these things. And to the extent that she hates any Jew who won't praise October 7th. That is, again, an impossible standard and
that is
and
not an impossible standard,
thus
Wick. You know that's not an impossible standard.
anti-Semitic. I think that it
Okay,
is pretty impossible
she
to get
holds to
all
that standard. So
Jews
do many other
to
Jews.
praise the rape and murder of other Jews. I think that's
Okay, again,
impossible,
these people typically
so
do not believe that the
improbable
rape
as to
happened.
be close enough for government work, okay?
Okay, again, these people typically do not believe that the rape happened. And if you were to ask them about the murder, they would say that the Zionists within Israel are engaging in the colonial project, this racist, ethnically supremacist, genocidal project, and therefore they're not civilians. I disagree with that, but that is their position, right? So it's like saying that if you're in Germany while the Holocaust is happening, and it's happening down the street from your fucking town, and you do nothing about it, and you choose to move into some Jew's house after he's kicked out, then you're in some way responsible. You're not just a civilian. If a bomb falls on you, that fuck it, you deserve it.
Hold on, I gotta
I
do some
disagree with that again.
moderation. People are
Sure.
spamming my chat. Gang, you can
Okay.
have criticisms, but if you spam it 20 times, I'm gonna get rid of you, okay? We don't do that. Say your piece, and then, you know, be normal, I guess. And if you got problems with something me or Dooby is saying, if Dooby wants, we could do call-ins. It's up to you guys. But yeah. We also got a few super chats, and I'll get through those.
Sure.
$2 from Gelatinous Rube to say merely asking your people to be better is racist. Gelatinous Rube, do you think that this is asking her people to be better? Do you think that's a fair
It is explicitly
characterization
that.
of
Yes.
this
It is
article?
explicitly. She's very harsh, but that's explicitly what she's doing. She's saying that all Jews have her entire community, all the Jewish institutions. She wants them to do better. She wants them to cut out this evil ideology that she believes has taken over her community. That is explicitly what she's trying to do. She wants them to be better. She's critiquing the current culture, and she believes that they can be better because she lays out historical Jews
She's
who
holding
were
all
better.
Jews responsible for the actions of Israel. That is
No, that's not true.
anti-Semitic.
That is not true. She lays
That
out
is
how
absolutely
how
true.
Jewish institutions, even in the United States, support Israel and support Zionism, right? So how they send money there,
Yeah, that's wrong, though.
how they encourage Zionism, how they send their children off to Aliyah, for example, right, on birthright trips. She's talking about these Jewish institutions within the United States that Jews tend to just accept as normal. She believes that these are actually happening in support of a genocidal, evil project. So it's not good enough to just ignore it. What you have to do is attack it. And I think if this were like fucking like Nazis, right? If they were like Germans in the United States, whose community was by and large funding this thing, and 95% of them supported Nazism, you would say, yeah, they do have a responsibility to attack this belief in their community. It's not enough to just say, "Oh, I don't agree. I don't agree with it. I'm not involved." Right? And
She's
again,
holding them
and again,
responsible for it.
I know she's in there
And that is
like Catholics have a
anti-Semitic.
responsibility.
And
No,
if
it's
I
not.
held with
Like Catholics have a
Palestinians
responsibility to call
responsible
out
for
rape
Hamas,
in the
that would
Catholic
be
Church.
Islamophobic or
Okay,
anti-Arab,
again,
I guess. Right? It's the
that's funny.
same.
That's funny from you, but we're gonna get there later.
We're gonna get there.
Um,
Okay.
so
Five
hold on. So
dollars
what?
from
Oh, go ahead.
$5 from Audacity to say Zionists like you, quote unquote, sounds like that could be a new NPR sign off. $5 from It's Vishy. Oh, we already read that one. Oh, no, we didn't. Last sentence of the Substack. Replace Judaism with Palestine and Palestine with Jews, and ask Dooby if he has a problem with that. So to be clear, very last sentence is, if Judaism has to die for Palestine to live, kill it. So he's asking, if Palestine has to die for Judaism to live, kill it. Would you be okay with that? Someone saying that?
I think you're misrepresenting it. So let me read it really
Well,
quickly.
this is the super chat saying, right?
No, I understand, but can you read the actual sentence again? Like what is actually there?
If Judaism has to die for Palestine to live, kill it.
Okay.
And so he's asking, if Palestine has to die for Judaism to live, kill it. Would you be okay with that?
I think that's not what he said to do. Right. So if you were to do what he said to do, it would be, if Islam has to die for Israel to live, kill it. And I think he would
No,
support
he
this.
said replace Judaism with Palestine. I did that. And Palestine with Jews. Oh, so I guess Jews. I didn't do that. I said Judaism. Ask Dooby if there's a problem with it. So again, if
So if
Palestine has to die for
Jews
Jews to
yeah, I'd
live,
support
kill
that.
it.
Yeah, if the options are no Palestine state ever, or Jews all die, I'd support destroying Palestine. Yes.
Okay.
But I think what makes more, maybe the super chatter is just a retard. But I think what he's actually trying to say, right, is if Islam has to die for Israel to live, kill it. And I would. I think I would agree with that, because I fucking hate Islam too. I think all these Abrahamic religions in general are pretty fucked up. So I'd be totally for that.
Okay. $5 from Testicle Johnson to say, Whick, would you rather your daughters date a Jewish guy or a black guy? You can only pick one, but you must pick. I have no problem if I had a daughter, and I don't, but if I had a daughter, they could date whatever they wanted. They could date a woman, they could date a man, they could date a Jew, they could date a Muslim, they could date a black guy. I don't care. Well, as long as they're happy and as long as the person treats them right. Okay, $5 from Audacity. We've all been deceived. We thought Whick had a hoodie. It's really a cleverly disguised Kittel Yermukal combo. Okay. And then Trib1 member for 5 months, need Zionism defined and used correctly. So again, in the article, she's very explicit. If you don't agree with destroying Israel, if you don't agree with destroying America, if you don't agree that October 7th was blessed and a miraculous event, if you don't support the glorious Al-Qasim brigades, according to this article, you're a Zionist.
Yeah, I disagree with her. Obviously, she's a much more extreme anti-Zionist than I am. She's also, I think, just based on her writing and some of her other writing, she's an colonist, anti-colonialist, anti-imperialist. She hates the United States. She hates imperialism. She hates colonism. So yeah, I think she's much more extreme than I am. Of course, that doesn't make her a bigot. And all of her criticism is centered around this ideology and the support for this ideology within the Jewish community. And she lays out explicitly a way for Jews to escape that criticism, which is to reject that ideology and to call it out and cut it out of their community. This is the opposite of bigotry. Right? This is her saying, identifying that yes, it is true that the vast majority of Jews believe or support the existence of a Jewish state, which means that they are Zionists. And because they are Zionists, she believes that they're supporting an evil genocidal ideology, and it's their responsibility as Jews to cut it out of their community. Again, totally reasonable. It's something that Germans were called on to do, something Catholics were called on to do, something Muslims were called on to do after 9/11, to call on like jihadism, to call out jihadism and cut it out of their community. It's something Christians are called to do with Christian nationalism. All these things are totally reasonable, right? And I don't understand why it's suddenly such an issue.
You're phrasing it in, I feel, a very dishonest way, because you leave out a lot of the other things that she attaches to this, such as saying that every Jewish person is responsible for the actions of Israel. I would never say that every Christian is responsible for the actions of Christian nationalism. I would never say every Palestinian is responsible for Hamas. I would never say that every American is responsible for the actions of President Trump. I would never say these things because they would be untrue. It would be essentializing in a way that is gross, disgusting, and in many cases, bigoted, right? It is something that we just do not do as moral actors. And I think that anyone saying that every single Jew on the face of this earth has a duty, right, or is responsible for the actions of Israel and has to take action, or else they are guilty of Israel's crimes, is that's just anti-Semitism, man.
I
It's
think you're
anti-Semitism by every definition of anti-Semitism I could
no, it's
find.
not.
It's anti-Semitism by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's definition. It's anti-Semitism by the Jerusalem Declaration on Anti-Semitism, right?
But
It's
it's not though.
anti-Semitism by the
You're
colloquial
misunderstanding.
definition
Oh
of
God,
anti-Semitism.
you're
It's just
misunderstanding.
anti-Semitism, man.
You're misusing and misunderstanding essentialism. Okay, so again, all of our critiques are attached to a specific ideology that has dominated the community. So again, it is just true that it has dominated the community, right? So, and she's not saying that they're responsible and that they are personally going out and raping people. She's saying they're responsible and that this rape is happening in their name due to this ideology that has dominated the community that they are a part of, and because they are not calling it out and attacking it, their silence is a complicity. Right, which is again, what is it? What is that saying? Inaction is action. So somebody's being raped down the alley, and you don't say something or do something to help them, you're complicit in that rape. It's exactly the same kind of
Do
thinking.
you think that again, a Jewish kid who was born like 20 years ago, he just plays video games, he doesn't follow politics. You may have heard it on the news, something about Israel once, but they're not religious. They don't go to any of the synagogues. They don't do really anything really connected to their Jewish religion. They just have to be happen to be ethnically Jewish. Do you think that they're responsible?
If they are a Zionist or they know Zionists or family members are Zionists or in a community with Zionists, then yeah, I think she would say that they're responsible because there is this evil, again, this evil within the community that they are ignoring rather than calling it out. And when it is called out, they retreat to I think she uses like the word like she says that they retreat to like talking about their feelings and how they feel uncomfortable because these things are being called out, and that is just a way to like to minimize but also distract from the fact that this ideology has resulted in the genocide of lots of people, the murder of lots of people, rape, torture, etc. So again, if that kid is being raised in a community, and in this community is a lot of people who are supporting this evil thing that's happening, that's supporting the Holocaust, for example, and that kid does not say, "Hey, you're a fucking piece of shit for supporting the Holocaust, and I want you out of my fucking community," then yeah, in some way he is responsible. Because if he's
Yeah,
just
I
silent and
reject
pretends
that,
it's
and I
no big
think
deal,
that calling that out is anti-Semitic because again, and the reason I would say
that's
this,
so
right,
silly.
especially not just with this article, but also with like you, Dooby, is because you would never do this in any other scenario. You would never
I just gave you tons
accept
of other
this to
scenarios.
be done about Palestinians. You would never accept it if people were roaming the streets of Dearborn, Michigan, or Florida, or on campuses and saying, hey, if you're Palestinian, you have to take a stance on what Hamas did on October 7th, or else you're responsible for it. You would call
Is
that
there an
bigoted,
issue?
you would call that racist, you would call that rightly out as is a horrible thing to do, is an immoral thing to do. But for whatever reason, for Jews, it's okay.
Wait, but Wick, that's a lie. I just gave you like
Hold on.
four or
Can
five
you show
other
me a? Can you
communities. Oh
show
God,
me? Can you
Wick, really quickly. I just gave you 4 or 5 other communities and examples where I did exactly
but
that.
you didn't
I
with
said,
Palestinians.
yes, I did.
You think it would be okay? That I just said that
Hold on.
someone
Let
to
me.
go to a campus, pick a campus, any campus on the United States, to
Okay.
find someone who's ethnically Palestinian, has no other connection to Palestine otherwise, and to demand that they take responsibility for what happened on October 7th? You think that would be okay?
Okay, but this is not a good comparison
Hold on.
because
Just answer
wait,
the
let me
question.
let
Do you
me.
think that
Oh
would be
God,
okay?
no, because that is not the same
No, it
thing.
wouldn't be okay. But you
Listen,
think it
Wick,
would be
let me
okay?
finish.
So
You gotta let me
let me
finish.
ask you this then.
You
Just
gotta let me
really
finish
quick.
first. You gotta
Do
let
you
me
think it
finish
would be
first.
okay for me to go to a campus to find a Jewish as someone who's ethnically Jewish and hold them responsible for what Israel's doing right now, unless they
No,
condemn it?
no, I don't. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't support that.
Well, would
But
you call
but to
that
be clear,
anti-Semitic if I did that?
no, I would not. Okay, but Wick, no, I would not.
Okay, well,
So, and the
this is where
reason,
we disagree.
please, okay, but I know, but the reason that I wouldn't say it's anti-Semitic is because there is, again, it's just true that the vast majority of Jews, I think like over 90%, support the existence of a Jewish state, which means they're
But that's
Zionists.
not the
Right?
same.
So
No, that
so
is
wait,
not
wait,
the
really quick.
same thing
You
as
gotta let me
supporting
finish.
Israel.
You
That
gotta let
is
me
not. You
finish.
keep equating these
No,
things.
but
These are
but
not
it
one to
is Wick.
one.
But it is Wick.
It is not.
Again, supporting the existence of an ethno state is exactly what she's talking about. She says that itself, that in and of itself, is enough to say that you're supporting uh, like ethnic hierarchy, you're supporting genocide, you're supporting ethnic cleansing, you're supporting everything that the Holocaust taught us to reject. So Jews came out of the Holocaust, and the world came out of the Holocaust saying, hey, ethnic hierarchy is fucking wrong, and we cannot support this. We apply the standard to South Africa, we apply the standard to fucking Myanmar, we apply the standard to fucking Japan, but with Israel, there's a big blind spot for some fucking reason, right? So she is applying the standard consistently, and I think if she were
Hold on, can
talking
you
about
show
South
me an
Africans
article of
during
her calling out
apartheid,
Japan?
really quickly.
Oh, no,
If we're talking
stop.
about,
Can you
oh
show me an
God, Wick,
article
if we're
or
talking
a
about,
tweet that she has made of
Wick,
her
Wick,
calling
she's
out
Jewish.
Japan?
She's talking about her community, Wick. She's talking about her community.
So isn't
I'm
it
sure,
interesting?
I'm sure
Isn't
she
it
would
interesting
say,
that
oh
she's
God,
only calling out one community?
it's her community. What are you talking
Isn't
about?
it
It is her
interesting
community.
if she is so against ethno-states, why isn't she calling out other ethno-states?
Wick, it is her community that is supporting this ethno state that exists in her name. Like this is total. Like of course she's going to focus on that ethno state. Like that's totally reasonable, Wick.
I don't think it is. I think if
That's
you
silly.
oppose ethno-states, you should oppose ethno-states. But she doesn't. She opposes one ethno-state and
You
no
don't
other.
know that at all. That's not true.
Then
Why would you
show
say
me
that?
evidence that that's not true.
Wick, you're making the claim. You need to show me evidence that she supports other ethno states.
Hold on, I can't prove you that she's never done something, right? I can't do
You're
that.
making the claim that she doesn't do this. There's no reason to believe this at all.
There is
so again,
reason
she's
based
Jewish,
on
talking about her
words
community,
in the article,
talking about Israel,
and the
of course,
fact that I
oh
can
God.
find no evidence of her doing it in any other case.
Wait, she explicitly calls like America like Satan, talks about like colonialism and imperialism and how the West is like evil and shit. Like I'm sure if we were to ask her, she would say that she rejects all ethno states. Wick, I don't think. In fact, I think she even references like apartheid South Africa in the article. I'm sure she doesn't support apartheid South Africa, right? So I think that you making that claim,
different than being
there's no
against
fucking basis at all.
ethno-states as a whole. You understand that, right?
Why?
Right. Hold on. Do you think that someone well, let me just ask. Do you think that someone could be neutral towards ethno-states but still be against apartheid South Africa?
No.
You don't? I disagree.
No.
I know plenty of people who don't give a fuck about Japan or other ethno-states. It's not really a big deal, but they are against apartheid South Africa because of the
And that
levels
person's
it
retarded.
went to and
Then that
the
person's a
horrors
retard.
that were committed under there.
Because an ethno state requires like again ethnic hierarchy and oppression in some way to maintain itself. This has been the case in every ethno state in history, Wick. So if you want to just pretend that that's not the case, fine. But like the reality is that if you just don't give a fuck about ethno states generally, and you support the existence of ethno states, and you don't like say that people who support ethno states should be called out, then yeah, you are actually okay with an ethnic hierarchy existing, which is exactly the opposite of the lesson that we took from the Holocaust. When people came out of the Holocaust, again, what we learned is extreme nationalism and ethnic hierarchies are unacceptable. The entire world condemned this, Rick. So you're rejecting that and saying that it's in Israel's case, it's okay to have this. And again, you're claiming.
Do you understand the context in which I say that? Well, first of all, I don't like ethno-states. I don't like that Israel is an ethno-state. But the context in which it has an ethno-state does bear on. The question we have to ask is this better than the alternative? It might not be good, but is it better than the alternative? And we have to ask, what would happen if Israel stopped being an ethno-state? What would happen? And as I have researched this, and as I have seen, the most likely outcome of them just ceasing to be an ethno-state is that all the Jews in that region would either be forcibly removed from that region or killed. One of those two things would happen.
Why do you think this?
Because there are a lot of groups that surround Israel that have said that that's what they want to do.
Okay. How like,
and so when they are
you're talking about
able
all
to
Arabs
go in
this region
and do that, that's what they will do.
Wait, hold on.
Well,
Do you
I'm going to
think that
read you again from Hamas's charter, right?
okay, irrelevant. Quick,
Why is it
you can.
irrelevant what the
It's
people
irrelevant
around them
because we're
want
talking
to
about.
do?
Okay, Wick, really quickly. You're talking about a political ideology, a militant political ideology, a violent political ideology. I agree, but you're talking about a political ideology. You can have some kind of like immigration process that says, "Hey, if you believe in this ideology, you're not allowed in here. If you're in our country and you're advocating for this political ideology, you're not allowed." You can do that, right? You don't need to say, "Oh, well, if we let the Arabs in, they're going to kill all the Jews," because that is what you're implying.
I think that it has happened in every other state in that region. There are no more
Okay,
Jews. Like
Wick.
the Jewish populations in the states, in the Arab regions surrounding that area, don't exist anymore.
Wick, aren't you applying a collective standard right now?
No, I'm not
Why?
implying a collective guilt right now. I am saying I would never hold an Arab who lives in Brooklyn responsible for that.
Yeah, but you just
I
think
would
that if
not
the
ask
hold
them
on,
to
most of the
condemn
Arabs in the
that.
world are in the
And
Middle
that's
East,
the
Wick.
difference between me and this article,
Wick,
right? Is I don't
most of the
provide,
Arabs. Okay,
I don't apply a global guilt to a specific group for the actions of something that happened
no,
across the
you're
world.
just
These are
implying that
different
the
things, and you
okay,
keep trying
you're
to equate
God,
these things, but they're not the same.
Wick, you're implying that Middle Eastern Arabs would kill all the Jews in Israel if they got the chance.
I am implying that the people who are surrounding Jerusalem, not Jerusalem, Israel right now,
Arabs,
have
right?
said that that's what they would do, right? And that it has happened before in that area. So the most likely outcome, right? If they stopped vetting who came in, right, and stopped keeping it a Jewish majority state, is that that's what would happen. And again, I don't like ethno states, but you have to consider what is the alternative. I don't see
Wait, this is
I don't
like
see
Wick.
in
I don't know
the
how you're not seeing this,
reasonable
Wick.
future. I don't see a path in a reasonable future to any sort of one state, non-ethno state where Jewish people in that region still exist. I don't see that path.
Do Black African Americans deserve an ethno state in the South?
Do Black African Americans deserve an ethno state in the South? No.
Yeah. Wait, but they were persecuted, enslaved, lynched. Like why wouldn't they get an ethno state?
Hold on. Is
They're
that any
surrounded
of
by
that
people who want to
happening
kill
right
them.
now? Like
Well, hold on, it was
you
happening at
could
the
have made
time.
the argument. You could have made the
Would you
argument
have supported it?
post World War that they needed that, right? That they had to have that.
Would you have
And
supported it?
I might have, depending, right?
Oh
I'd have
God.
to research it more, right, and look at the things more. But what was done to Black people in the South, like if they had an ethno state, more of them would be alive today.
No, I don't.
You don't
One, I
think
think it's
so?
no, I think it's ridiculous. First off,
Okay,
but
I
secondly,
just disagree.
but
Remember,
secondly,
if you went to
okay.
try to vote
Wick,
as a
you're
black
oh
man in
God.
the South, even
I
this is
understand.
post World War II, right? Not post World War II, post Civil War, right? They would lynch you, they would kill you, they would rape you, they would drive
How
you
many
out,
people
they
did that
would
happen
destroy
to?
you, right? And it happened over and over and over again.
How many
So
people?
yeah, maybe they should have had some place where they could go, where they
Wick, how
could
many people did
just
that happen to?
arm up and protect themselves. Maybe they should have had that.
Okay, how many people did that happen to?
Thousands.
Yeah, like three. I think 3 to 4 thousand, and like a quarter of them were white Republicans, right? Who were lynched alongside the black people for like supporting their right to vote. So I agree. Terrible. I agree. There's obviously systemic discrimination, racism, people being intimidated, but that does not justify the creation of an ethno state where this racial divide is going to be made permanent. Right, seeing each other is like having like an ethnic
Hold on.
hierarchy, and outsiders and insiders, us versus them. That'll be
What do you
guaranteed in
mean permanent?
perpetuity.
What do you mean permanent? What do you mean permanent? Do you
I
think
mean,
I'm calling for a forever ethno state in Israel? No. I think
when
we
would you
should
when do
be
the ethno
working
state?
to a time and a place where they don't need it. But I am acknowledging the reality that at this time, in the year of our Lord 2026, without it, it would be a massacre.
That's Wick. That's so silly.
It's
So
why you say
and
it's
it's
silly,
silly
but
because
it's
I'm going to
happened
tell
in
you.
every
I'm going
Arab
to tell you.
state surrounding them.
It's happened in Europe.
And
Should they be kicked out of Europe? Should we let
you
should we let them
have
leave Europe away?
groups with major powers, right, in the region that have said that this is what that have
Are Jews safe in
populations,
Europe?
right, that have whole organizations that have said we're going to kill every Jew on earth.
Wick, are Jews safe in Europe?
Hold on, are they safe in? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. There's
Okay, you're being silly.
anti-Semitism is on the rise globally. I don't think Jews are like they're more safe than they were in the Holocaust, but they are less safe than they were 20 years ago.
Okay, so I agree that anti-Semitism is on the rise, but I think that a lot of what we're calling anti-Semitism these days is this sort of thing, which is criticisms of an ideology. So I think that those numbers are inflated, actually. But I agree, you know, synagogue shootings happen, murders happen 100%, right? These are bad things. But I think that's silly to me because I think that you were like in this argument where you were supposed to be opposed to ethnic collectivization of like ethnic responsibility or guilt or ethnic prejudice. You were making an ethnic prejudicial ethnic determination about Arabs in the Middle East. That if we let them in, well, they just massacre all the Jews.
Do you understand the difference between saying, hey, in this region, populations have behaved in this way, and we have to take into that account, between that and saying, hey, every Arab across the globe should be held responsible for this?
Wick, the vast majority of Arabs...
Can you acknowledge that these are fundamentally different statements, fundamentally different things, fundamentally different ways of looking at the world? And what this author did, right, in the Yes All Jews article is basically hold all Jews everywhere responsible for the actions of some Jews in a specific region. And to say that I am doing the same thing is just dishonest. It's not true.
You are doing the same thing.
I am not doing the same thing.
Okay, you're holding all Middle Eastern Arabs.
At no point said we should hold
all Middle Eastern Arabs responsible.
A Middle Eastern
for the
Arab
actions
who happens
of some
to live in
of
Hezbollah,
a tiny minority of Arabs.
happens to be a part of Hezbollah. I don't think we should hold some Muslim or Arab who happens to live in Florida responsible for what that guy does.
Wick,
they're not responsible for what that guy does.
What about Palestinians? So leaving aside like Hezbollah and whatnot, what is the argument for Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza joining Israel as citizens, even if that will obviously there'll be more of them than there are Jews because Jews are a minority.
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
So what would be the problem with Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank getting access to full equal rights, right, as Israeli citizens, and those areas become parts of Israel? What would be the issue with that?
The issue is that they would have, as I understand it, and I have to look at the population numbers again, that Jewish ethnicity would no longer be the majority in Israel, and that they would be able to be outvoted on things. And there are enough people in those regions that just want all Jews out or dead that it would be suicide to do that at this point.
Okay, so you are making a collective guilt thing. Are you saying that all Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank...
That is not collective guilt.
Yeah, it is, Wick.
No,
yes, it is.
Because I don't think that all Palestinians everywhere want this nor are responsible
I'm talking
for
about
this.
the ones in West Bank and Gaza, Wick. So those Palestinians specifically, in the West Bank, millions of people.
Hold on.
In West Bank and Gaza.
Hold on. No. See the difference here.
That if they got voting rights and
it
equal
would
rights
be
as
okay
citizens of Israel,
if you wanted to say
they would either kill or
hold on.
Or
if you
expel
wanted
all the
to say
Jews.
If you wanted to say that all Jews in Israel, right, have some responsibility for what Israel is doing, that would be a remarkably less anti-Semitic statement and much more something that someone could get on board with than saying all Jews globally have a responsibility for what has happening in Israel. And you see the difference. I can say that, you know what? We can recognize the actions of a majority population that they have taken in the past, that they have said they want to do, and we can hold that group specifically responsible for that in whatever ways we deem appropriate. But what we cannot do is say some Palestinian dude who lives in Dearborn, Michigan, has anything to do with that or is responsible for that in any way, shape, or form. These are different things.
Would you have supported apartheid South Africa? Like, would you have supported the continuation of apartheid?
No.
Wait, but the argument that you're using now is exactly the argument that white South Africans use to justify apartheid.
Yeah, but the facts were different.
If black, no, Wick, they weren't.
Yes, they were.
No, Wick, they were a tiny minority, Wick. They were
Hold on.
like 9% of the
The
population,
people
and they
who
and hold
Nelson
on, and there were
Mandela
people. Wait,
and
wait,
the other
really,
people
really
who
quickly,
fought
Wick,
against
really quickly.
apartheid
There were
in
people
South
on the other
Africa
side, Wick. Oh God,
specifically said that they did
Wick,
not want to kill all the whites,
Wick.
right?
There
That they
were
did
people on
not
the
want to do
Nelson
this,
Mandela
that
wasn't
they
the only
didn't
leader.
have all these things.
Nelson Mandela wasn't the only leader. There were more militant
He was
people
one of the
who were
major
openly
leaders.
who were openly advocating for the killing of all white people, the expulsion of white people, and this was the justification for keeping apartheid in place. So you're using effectively the same argument, right? As those people who justified apartheid South Africa.
It's
So
not the
what is the
same
difference?
argument. It's the fact patterns are different. And again,
How?
we have the writings and the speeches and the actions of the people who are fighting against apartheid South Africa. They were remarkably different than the actions of Hamas. One was a lot more justified than the other.
Okay.
Well,
Wick.
can you just acknowledge that Hamas has behaved much more atrociously than the people who opposed South African apartheid, that were militantly opposed to South African apartheid? That they never did anything on the scale of what Hamas did. They never tried to do anything on the scale of what Hamas did. They never acted as Hamas did. And yes, they weren't perfect, and they had some things that I do condemn, right? But these are just night and day comparisons.
No, they're not actually. So, and I can explain why. So, it is true that in South Africa, the Afrikaners had a long history of oppression, right? Like the Boer War killed like thousands of these people. The British oppressed them, and they were a tiny minority within this region. I think like 8 or 9% or some shit like this, right? So they imposed apartheid from the start. Said, hey, if we allow these black people to have political power, they will kill us, they will slaughter us, and they will push us out, right? And there was a ton of violence committed by black people who were racist and wanted to get these white South African Afrikaners out. So that was happening. It wasn't organized in the way that it is with Hamas, obviously, because Hamas is like a government, a militant group that's been around for a long time. It's been armed. But I think that if there were groups sending money and weapons into South Africa, you absolutely would have had a massive like a outburst of violence against white South Africans. Like absolutely would. And there was violence, to be clear. There was like necklacing that happened. They were putting fucking tires around people's necks and burning them.
These are very
rapes and murders and beatings.
These are very different
Why?
situations. Well, one, you have a quasi-government organization that is calling, that has a totalitarian control. And to be clear, they abuse Palestinians horrifically. Hamas abuses Palestinians horrifically. It's crazy bad what they do to them.
So does
they
Israel.
torture them.
So does Israel. They do. Actually worse than anything I've seen from Hamas. Like there's God knows how many documented cases from just about every human rights organization of rape, torture, beatings, intentional starvation of detainees, like just fucking countless, right? Examples we can look at for this.
The major difference is that when given power, when given the ability, Hamas does not discriminate at all in Israel, and you can argue it doesn't discriminate enough, but there is discrimination there between targets.
So one, not
Hamas
true.
kills
First off,
the military in order to get to the civilians.
Hamas is like 30
and
to 40,000 people.
Israel kills sometimes more than they should civilians to get to the military.
Sometimes more than they should, Wick. Like by their own numbers, it's like 85% civilians, Wick. Sometimes more than they
Hold
should.
on, by Israel's numbers?
Yes, there was a leak in like late last year where they.
Yeah, I don't believe that, frankly.
You don't believe their own numbers?
Maybe though. Maybe
hold on, you don't believe Israel's
civilian
numbers?
casualties are high in any war, right? Even Americans.
Why don't you
in
believe
the
their
Iraq
numbers?
War, in the Afghanistan War, like if you look at the civilian casualty to militant ratio,
yeah, but
it's
Israel's
high.
much higher than every other. Israel is much higher than any of those other things.
I just don't
out.
believe your numbers. I think you've.
It's not my numbers. That's
you guys
Israel's
have
numbers.
Dishonestly represented these things so much. I just don't believe your numbers.
Then like
frankly.
Google it. Then Google
but
it.
here's the thing, right?
You won't do that, will you?
Here's the thing. We can Google it if you like, but that's
these are Israel's numbers, and typically I can lay out exactly what it is.
The thing that you do,
God.
and you're doing this in this discussion, is you retreat to Israel bad.
I haven't
and even if I
retreated
agree
anywhere.
with that, that has no bearing on this article and whether it's anti-Semitic. And this is the insidious nature of
It is.
anti-Semitism.
These are
They
connected,
point to
Wick. These are
real or
absolutely
imagined
connected.
faults in certain Jews, and they apply it to all Jews or most Jews or Jews who have nothing to do with it, right? It's this collective guilt that they're applying. This article does it throughout. Again, the whole title of the article is Yes, All Jews. It's this
Yes,
collective guilt.
it's an
It's on its
intercommunal
face
critique, Rick. Yeah,
anti-Semitic.
communities can critique themselves, and that is not bigoted. So when the Jewish prophets criticize Israel, right? All Jews in Israel, Wick, all the Jews, they were not being anti-Semitic, Wick. This is a critique of the culture that they saw within the community that they thought was toxic. They called them nest of vipers and yada yada yada. They were critiquing the entire Jewish community back then. They're prophets. They're not anti-Semites, right? I think she is doing the same thing. It's the same Jewish tradition, same tradition that exists in all communities of intra-communal critique, right? There's an internal critique of a culture that is dominant within the community. She thinks her community is not doing enough to cast this evil out of itself, so she's calling on all of them to do it. That is not, you framing that as like anti-Semitism or bigotry in some way is so
I'm just
fucking
going to read the
ridiculous.
quote.
Right? So when the black
Gaza's
community,
Mujahideen are at the heart of the struggle, currently spearheaded
harsh
by
words
Hamas's
does not
Al-Qasim
equal ethnic
Brigade,
bigotry, Wick.
who executed the miraculous Al-Aqsa flood on October 7th, 2023, an operation that genuine Jewish anti-Zionists unequivocally recognize as one of the most prolific anti-colonial operations in history. When she says that Jewish university staff and students are currently receiving massive payouts for so-called anti-Semitism claims after
That's
the
true.
blessed Al-Aqsa flood operation, when she repeatedly denies any anti-Semitism exists or can exist because Zionism exists and
She
they
didn't do that
have
either,
done
Wick.
it to themselves, right?
She didn't
When
do
she
that. Where does
again
she say
says
that
genuine,
anti-Semitism
like
doesn't exist and
she
can't exist?
she says genuine Jewish and Zionists unwaveringly support the total eradication of Israel and the greater state in America, full land back without a speck of Zionist or Euro-American imperial settler colonial control. This includes Jews supporting removing fellow Jews from Palestine while ensuring they don't do harm where they go further, displace indigenous peoples elsewhere. This is all bigoted, anti-Semitic, collective
Oh
guilt,
God.
essentializing language, and we need to call it out. I'm going to let you have the last word on this, and then we got to transition to super chats, and I guess if you want to do call-ins, we could do call-ins. But yeah.
Sure. So, yeah, I think that you are, like, for you to say that a Jewish woman writing to her own community, calling on them to reject a political ideology that has dominated her community for decades, to say that that is anti-Semitic is fucking crazy, right? So anti-Semitism, yes, is real. It's deadly. People died. The Tree of Life shooting was real, right? Holocaust denial is real. All these things are real. But when we apply that like anti-Semitism, like that word, to a Jewish woman's, harsh, fierce, fucking inflammatory critique of her own community's political choices, and again, the vast majority of the community do support the existence of Israel, so they are Zionists. We're not like that doesn't protect Jewish people, Wick. What that does is dilute the word, so it means fucking nothing, right? I think that the people that benefit from this kind of like conflation, right? You just conflated with all that long list of shit you went down. She's explicitly talking about the ideology and how and what she thinks is her community's responsibility to attack this ideology. You conflating the criticism, her criticism of an ideology that's dominated the community with like ethnic bigotry and hatred of Jews because they are Jews is ridiculous, right? That just allows like Nazis, fucking Kanye. It allows them to go around saying that when people call him an anti-Semite, they're full of shit because that word is just used. I mean, it's like when we're calling people racist, right, or sexist a few years ago. Same thing, right? So if this article is anti-Semitic, Barack Obama is anti-white because he called on white Americans to confront the racism in their own communities. So is Joe Biden. So is every prophet in the Hebrew Bible, right, who criticized their entire community, condemned all the Israelites with language as harsh or harsher than this, by the way. If this is anti-Semitic, it's like no community can ever be held to like a moral standard by one of its own members without somebody crying like bigotry, which is like, that is not a world that protects anybody, at least of all Jewish people. That's a war that protects power. It's a war that protects the dominant ideology within a group, or the dominant belief system within a group. These are very different things, Wick.
Okay. Well, we obviously disagree. here are the super chats. And gang, if you want, I guess there's a poll, and if I asked, is the article anti-Semitic, and you can vote. I'll leave that up for a little bit longer, so you can get in your votes, whether yes, Whick is right, or no, Dooby is correct. You can choose as you wish. Let me read some of these super chats, and we'll get through it. Dragar for $10 says, we have finally come full circle. Thank you for the $10. 10 pounds from Riz What the Fuck to say, if we were to grant the article weren't anti-Semitic, parentheses, it absolutely is, end parentheses, would Dooby admit that it was otherwise disgusting anyway, anti-Semitism aside, glorifying the mass murder of Israeli Jews?
Yeah, like I said, I think some of the language is way too harsh. I wouldn't say demonic. I wouldn't talk the glory. I wouldn't say the glorious Alexa flood or whatever the fuck. I think some of this is way too harsh. I don't agree with kicking all Jews out of Israel. Right? Though I do support dismantling the ethno state, I agree with that. I don't support kicking all Jews out of Israel. Like that's too far for me. But again, these are political disagreements, not like disagreements about like ethnic bigotry. So I think that if it weren't the case that Jews within Israel right now, within the what you would probably call Palestine right now, if it weren't the case that they'd come in and colonize the area and ethnically cleanse people and oppress people and genocided people potentially, if that weren't the case, I don't think she'd have an issue with Jews being there. I think the issue is the ideology and the actions that have flowed from the ideology and her community's lack of action against that ideology. That is explicitly what she's calling out.
$5 from the Trib One. The whole compliant take works for the Holocaust. It doesn't work for this. Israelis aren't aiding in the murder of Palestinians. Stop comparing the two. $5 more.
Well, this person's just retarded. Like obviously, if you were they said Israelis. So if you're an Israeli and you're not like standing up against the government, you're not protesting every day, you're not fighting back against the IDF when they go into the West Bank and kick people out of their homes, if you're not trying to knock down the fucking walls to get food into Gaza when they impose a blockade, then yeah, you are complicit. I think you're totally complicit. You're not doing enough to fight this. It's not good enough to just say, oh, well, I disagree, then go on with your day. If the Holocaust were happening right next door to you, I think you would have a responsibility to do something about it. Absolutely.
$5 from the Trib One. Two-state solution with Israel continuing or relocation for Jews to another potential ethno-state. I don't see any other way, to be honest. How about y'all? Two-state solutions only. Look, to be clear, I don't know if there's any solution in the two-state or otherwise in the immediate future. I don't see a path. But if I had my druthers, yeah, two-state solution is probably what we need. So. Okay, $5 from Gelatinous Rube to say it's, quote, you can call out the Somali criminals we're protecting. That's racist, unquote, all over again. No. $5 from the Trib One to say, quick search. It seems like her focus is solely on Israel. Not shocking, but it's very leftist of her. Ethnostate does not equal bad. The how and the why matters. Fair enough.
Yeah, I agree. And in this case, the how and the why are, I think, explicit racism. And the how is ethnic cleansing and brutal occupation, torture, murder for fucking decades. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Yeah.
$5 from
if Israel were an island somewhere and they just didn't want to let non-Jews on, I don't think anybody would have an issue with it. It is the how it's happening. No, I don't think so.
I think a large group would have.
I don't think there's any reason to think that.
$5 from Audacity to say, how do you know you don't like ethnostates if you haven't had any before? Using my superior dad logic. Thank you for the $5. £5 from Riz What the Fuck to say, Dooby making that point on an ethnostate for freed slaves while being ignorant of Liberia is exemplary of his deep ignorance on these.
Well, that person's also retarded because, of course, I know about Liberia, and this was one of the three options that they tested after slavery. Right? Obviously, well, it wasn't. It was tested during slavery. It was either we keep them enslaved, we keep the boot on their neck, so that they don't rise up and kill us, which is, I think, what Israel is currently choosing, or we'll set them free and risk them murdering us all. Or we send them somewhere else, just get rid of them because there's too many of them here. I think some of these states, if you put this into context, like at the height of slavery, had like 40 or 50% slave population. Like the entire, like half of the population was slaves.
I just say
these people were very afraid.
It's crazy to compare Israel and Palestine to slavery in the 1860s or the
No,
1850s. It just these are
why.
wildly not the same thing.
Would you compare it to South
maybe
Africa?
oppressed, but they ain't slaves, bro.
Hold on. Would you compare it to South Africa, Wick? Because
That is a better comparison.
There's an
It's not
ethnic
the
hierarchy
same,
and legal
though.
structure.
There are
Why?
fundamentally differences because the apartheid that was in South Africa was far more oppressive. The people, the
That's not
Arabs
true.
who are Israeli citizens, may
absolutely
have
not
some
true.
rights that are different. May not have some rights that they probably should have. I'll agree with you there, but it's a fundamentally different.
Why are you so weak about that
thing?
Why do you say, oh, they may not have some rights that they probably should have?
Because it's not as strong as the apartheid was in South Africa.
No, hold on.
It is a much weaker, quote-unquote, apartheid.
May not have
it
some
just
rights that
is.
they probably should have. Obviously, this implies that you think maybe there's a chance that they shouldn't have these rights. Right? So if you do think they should have these rights,
I just said that they should have those rights, but it's not.
No, you said probably should have.
Hold on. Do you
soften
think
your language
it's
when it
the
comes
same, right? Do you think it's the same that if someone cuts you off in traffic versus someone blowing up your car? These are both things that I don't want to happen to me. But if I had to rate them on a scale, getting cut off in traffic, while bad, is far, far less bad than having my car blown up. For whatever reason, you guys don't understand scale.
No, I think you're minimizing the fucking horrors that Palestinians have had to deal with in Israel, right? So if you think that what they've had to deal with is not as bad as
Israeli citizens who are Arab. That's what I'm talking about specifically.
Hold on, Wick. To be clear, if you think that what's been happening in Gaza and the West Bank for fucking decades now is not comparable or is not as bad or worse actually than what was happening in South Africa during apartheid, you're crazy. You're just not read up enough. You're not informed. You need to do some fucking research.
You understand that first. Well, do you think it was as bad as antebellum or like 1800 slavery in America?
No.
Do you think that
No, but hold on, but what you'd be comparing there is like ethnic.
Dooby?
Well,
Why are you minimizing it? You're saying something else was worse?
It's also not as bad as a Holocaust, Wick. Also not as bad as a Holocaust. But that doesn't mean that it isn't an ethnic hierarchy that should be called out. And if I were to talk about the fucking antebellum South, I wouldn't say, oh, maybe these Africans don't have some rights that they probably should have. I would say they absolutely should have these rights, and it's fucking racist and unacceptable not to give them these rights. But when you talk about Israel, you soften your language. You say, oh, well, maybe they shouldn't have these rights, or maybe they probably should have these rights. When there shouldn't be a fucking question, Wick. Why is there a question?
Arabs who are citizens of Israel have held positions of power.
That doesn't mean they have the same rights.
The
that doesn't mean they have the same rights.
Differences between the rights that they have are small.
Not true.
Okay. What's the biggest difference?
They don't have the right to self-determination.
They can vote.
They don't have the right to self-determination, Wick. In fact,
I think you
supported this action.
Do you think
I think when you
that
guys were talking
Arab
the other day,
Israeli cannot vote?
That's not self-determination.
That is self-determination as we understand it.
No, it is not. Could you think that Israel would allow for
Hold
Arabs?
On. Because I am a minority party in my country, do I not have self-determination?
Let me answer the question, Wick.
I'm a minority party in my country. Do I not have self-determination?
Wick, do you think that Israel would allow for Arabs to vote for Israel not to be an ethno-state anymore?
They can vote for it, but they wouldn't have the votes for it.
Hold on. If they had the votes for it, do you think that this would be allowed?
Probably not, for the reasons I outlined earlier.
And you support, and I think when you were on that panel the other day, right? I made the mistake of like tuning in for a bit while Connor was watching it. I think it was Connor, might have been Kalunda, and you were supporting like ethnic-based like immigration laws and deportation if it were the case that the Jewish supermajority were being challenged in Israel. That is like fucking crazy, Wick. Like white nationalists say all the time that if we let more black people into the country, look at the black crime rate. It's like up to 90%.
It's a hypothetical.
No,
that would I allow
you're supporting it, Wick. You're using to justify your position, Wick.
Who specifically wanted to kill me or remove me from my home? Wick. If I could set up a system of laws to stop that, would I? Yes.
Okay, Wick, you're doing it again. You're implying that it's reasonable to have the prejudiced belief that if we just let the Arabs in, they're going to kill all the Jews. That is not reasonable.
I will read it to you again.
You're going to do the thing again where you read the quotes of specific people. Wick.
There are Jews everywhere. We must attack every Jew on planet Earth.
That's a single guy.
We must slaughter and kill them.
You're being stupid.
With Allah's help. We will die while
Wick, would it be
exploding and cutting
reasonable
the
to say
necks and
that
legs of the
Jews can't have
Jews.
power in
We
Israel
will
because of Ben
lacerate them
Gvir?
and tear them to pieces. And
Would
this
it be
isn't a
reasonable to say,
minority
oh God,
opinion. This is
Wick,
from the
you don't know
government
that. You
of
don't. Okay, again, Wick, would it be reasonable to say
Gaza.
that Jews cannot have power, cannot be trusted with power in that region because of Ben Gvir?
She says that in the article. Is
I'm
that
asking you,
anti-Semitic
Wick,
to say?
Wick, I'm asking you, would it be reasonable to say that Jews cannot have power in that region of the world because of Ben Gvir?
Would it be? Well, that's what you're saying, aren't you?
No, you're
Oh,
saying
so
that.
you're
You're
okay with
saying
Israel having power?
no.
And the reason?
Look,
Yeah?
okay, I don't know what you think you're doing right now. You're not. You have. This isn't a gotcha. You're failing right now.
Am
So
I?
you said
Okay.
you're supporting an ethno state, but also potentially ethnic based race immigration laws and deportation laws.
Because of the pattern of behavior in that region,
based on the
yes.
statements of specific individuals, Wick. So if I
But
were to
of
look at Ben
governments.
Gvir,
Of governments.
yeah, hold on, yeah, governments. If I were to look at the actions of the Israeli government for fucking decades now, if I were to look at the actions and the words,
It would be okay to
listen,
oppose
Wick,
that.
no,
Yes.
listen, Wick,
You
listen,
wouldn't be
the actions-
anti-Semitic
the
for
actions and
opposing
the-
that,
listen,
would
Wick,
you?
The actions and the words of Israeli politicians for decades now. If I were to look at that and say, hey, well, absolutely, Jews cannot have power in this kind of side of the world. We can't trust Jews to be a majority here. So we need to get the Jews out of power. You'd call me a fucking bigot, right? Because that would actually be saying that all Jews are responsible for the actions of Ben Gvir. I don't think that. I don't think that you think that. But you're applying that to Palestinians. You're saying that because like this guy in Hamas said this, well, if we let Palestinians in, of course they're all going to kill the Jews. Well,
the last time they let Palestinians in,
Wick.
they killed the Jews.
Wick.
The last time they let Palestinians in, October 7th, they killed the Jews.
You're fucking ridiculous, Wick.
Hold on, that's just true.
Hamas, Wick.
The last
Hamas,
time
oh
that they let the Palestinians into Israel,
last
they went
time
on a
Jews went into the West
spree
Bank,
and
they
killed as
killed
many
people.
as they could.
Okay, so again, this would justify, from your perspective, kicking the Jews out of Israel, kicking them out of all the West Bank territories, not allowing them in the region, because the last time they went there, they ethnically cleansed people, they committed a genocide, et cetera, et cetera.
That's what you think happened?
That's what you think, Wick. That's what you think. Because otherwise you're applying a double standard, Wick.
I'm not
so
applying
if you're
a
going to
double
say
standard.
that it's reasonable to say that we can't allow the Palestinians in.
If Israel did not
because
exist in
Hamas
that
said
region,
this.
we can have a
Oh my
discussion
God.
of whether or not they should, but they do, and there are millions of Jews and Israel Arabs who live in that region, right, who exist now. So the question becomes, what do we do with reality
But the Palestinians
now?
are also
We
there,
have
Wick.
to look at the actions in the past of these individuals, these governments, right? And we have to say, well, what's the most likely case scenario if they lose their majority, right? What is likely to happen? And I think it is just true, and you can call it whatever you like, but it's just true to say that that's what is likely to happen based on the statements given by government officials,
by this
and
dude,
organization officials within that area, and not only that, but the actions of those in the area.
Of a tiny
minority, support
of a tiny
the government of Israel. They have absolutely behaved in atrocious ways. And if I could snap my fingers and make everything good, I would remove them from power. Absolutely.
Wick,
and I would make sure that they would never hold power again. Right? That's what I would do, but I can't do that. So we have to ask, what is better? In what context, right, should we, or how should we behave in this context that we find ourselves in?
You're just attempting to justify your ethnic prejudice when it's not working, right? So again, from your perspective,
you're trying to justify anti-Semitism, and it's not working.
No, I'm not.
You're getting destroyed. I'll just read you the stats. Like, you can posture all you want.
Try to distract
but 74% of people thought you were fucking stupid.
I don't give a fuck. Most Americans are stupid.
Exactly. Right?
Again,
you don't give a fuck. But that's okay.
Most people are stupid, Wick.
That's just what the stats say, though.
I'm sorry to break it to you.
Polls say.
Most people are dumb.
For whatever reason, you give a fuck about stats when 90% of Jews think the existence of a Jewish state, that stat matters.
What are you talking about?
But this stat doesn't?
Wick.
Okay, whatever.
Obviously,
anyway, let me read these.
Hold on, Wick. You're trying to dodge, Wick. It's so embarrassing. Just hold
$10.
So can you tell me again why you think it's reasonable? Because how many Palestinians do you think participated on October 7th? Like a few thousand?
I'm not sure.
And you're going to say that because a few thousand of them did this, and because like 30 to 40,000 were in Hamas, that millions of them,
Hold on.
cannot
Do
be
you know
allowed
what
to
the
go into
second
Israel?
Intifada was?
Okay, Wick,
Do you know
you're
what the
not gonna
first Intifada was?
I needed to engage, Wick. I needed to engage with this. So you're telling me again, your position is.
Do you understand
please
the
just
Israel
engage with what I'm saying.
Arab War in
Engage with what I'm
1948?
saying, please.
Do you understand?
I know you don't like Arabs. Engage with what I'm saying.
I am
Okay,
engaging with what you're saying.
No, you're not.
I am
answer my
absolutely.
fucking question, then,
You're
Wick.
saying
Then answer my
you're
question.
trying to pick a specific
Wick,
moment in
answer my
time,
question, Wick.
and I'm saying that this has happened throughout the existence of the state of Israel. Arabs have continuously
Wick,
tried
answer
to
my
kill
question.
them.
Yeah, Arabs.
Yes, these Arabs in this region, not all Arabs globally. And I would never hold those who didn't try to do that responsible for those who did.
If I were talking about Israel, and I'm talking about like IDF soldiers, for example, that have raped people, would it be okay for me to say that Jews would rape Palestinians? Jews rape people?
Of course not.
Okay, well then why are you okay with doing that to Palestinians?
I'm not. I
Or
specifically
Arabs,
said that's not the case.
No, you did. You said Arabs in this region. So Jews in this region have ethnically cleansed people, genocided people, raped people, tortured people.
Yes, that would be okay to say because it's true. But the difference is you and this article, well, I'll say this article is saying that all Jews, right, everywhere, globally.
Wick.
That's the difference.
Wick.
So, you just are pretending not to understand.
No,
you are pretending not to understand.
I've gone over that for you like over and over again.
I know,
She's
but
talking specifically
you've glossed
about
over
an ideology.
it. You haven't
Wick,
ever
you're not even
addressed
talking about
it.
an ideology.
You've been shown to be a hypocrite on this. You've been shown that you would never accept this in other situations, but you do accept it for Jewish people
Wick,
for
I gave you
whatever
multiple
reason.
situations. Wick.
This is
why are you
what's
lying?
been shown.
No, hold on. Now you're just lying, Wick.
I'm not lying. We did it with Palestinians. Would it be okay? I'll just ask you. Would you consider it bigoted for me to go to a university in America or a campus to find a Palestinian person who has no connection to Hamas, no connection to Hezbollah or anything like that, and hold them responsible and for the actions of Hamas? You would obviously call that bigoted.
Wait, do you remember me bringing up Germans after World War II, Catholics, white people, men, Muslims? Do you remember all those examples I brought up of me saying that this exact kind of thing? Wait, hold on. Yes, actually, Wick. Yes, for Palestinians.
Again, answer my question, please.
Wick,
answer my question. You can just answer my question. Would it be bigoted for me to go to Dearborn, Michigan, to a campus, anywhere in America, find a Palestinian guy who has no connection?
Why do you do this? When you start losing, you like just start talking over people.
Hey, you are responsible and should be held responsible for the actions of Hamas. You would call that
extremely
bigoted.
Transparent, Wick. So when you're losing an argument, you just start talking over people.
So you won't answer the question?
I'm trying to address it right now, actually. But I need you to stop interrupting me. Right? So if we need to bring in like lactobacillus to moderate, that'd be totally fine. But you got to stop interrupting when I'm trying to answer your question. Right? So the reason I brought up all those other examples, Wick, was to show you that I'm not applying a double standard. I'm applying the same fucking standard, which is the same standard that she's applying, which is Catholics, Muslims, Jews, men, women, etc. All these groups have some responsibility to call out toxic behavior within their own community, 100%. And again, intercommunal criticism is totally normal, totally accepted. I accept all of that, but you keep saying that I'm only okay with it for Jews, and this is a lie. Because I've said this to you repeatedly.
I wanted to be clear, you motherfucking liar, that you didn't answer my question. I asked you a specific question, and you obfuscated. You went on this rant that wasn't connected. You didn't answer my fucking yes or no question, Dooby. You are a fucking liar. You're just a fucking liar.
Wick.
You can go away now. Bye. I asked you a very specific question. I interrupted you because you weren't answering that question. You continued to assure me that you were about to answer that question, and then you fucking lied to my fucking face. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out. Get the fuck out. Go fucking hate Jews somewhere else. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. That's insanity. I don't understand why anyone takes this motherfucker seriously. And he wonders why no one believes him when he accuses other people of doing things, right? He wonders why his campaign of terror against other groups and other streamers and other people, right, just don't work. It's because he's a fucking liar. No one trusts him. His credibility is shot. Let me continue to read the super chats. $5 from Gelatinous Rube. Quote, populations act in this way, unquote. It's not something Whick applies to any other group, not even the same people in Europe, only when they're near Israel. That's not true. That's not true at all. What other populations act this way? Like, so, for example, I can make predictions of what would happen if MAGA got into power. And I did, right? A group of people who share an ideology, I predicted, this is what they're going to do. But that is a very different thing than holding everyone who happened to vote for Trump responsible for what Trump has done. I don't hold that position. I fought against that position when I fought against Destiny on this. That's just true. $5 from Trib1. You can be bigoted towards your own community. You can also be wrong if you give a take about your own community. Use your brain, Dooby. Use good think. $2 from the Trib1. What is Dooby's wanted solution? Yes, all Jews, or... And then Lawson Harrison for $10. Doobers, did you know the K slur isn't actually a slur, and in fact a political term? The Soldiers of Odin put out a great article you should check out. I don't even know what the Soldiers of Odin is. Sounds sus. SorumNet, 5 Whick TV gift memberships. Thank you for that. I am just very frustrated, gang. If you want to answer my question, you're free to answer my question, but don't tell me you're going to answer my question and then not answer my question. Just don't do that, right? I'm not going to ban you, Dooby, but yeah, it's kind of bullshit. Oh, look, right? 10 gift TV memberships. Says for AK Batozai. Oh, thank you for the 10 gift TV, Whick TV memberships. Oh, it's a joke? Fair enough. 5 gift TV memberships from the Trib1. Thank you. I appreciate it. We have a rising anti-Semitism problem, okay? Across the globe, but especially in political spaces. And I think this is kind of a good example of it. How they'll do fucking mental gymnastics for days, right? To run cover for obvious anti-Semitism. And again, we can just read the definition, right? Here's one, okay? We'll go through it. It's the Jerusalem Declaration of Anti-Semitism. Here, well, I can't fit it all in, so I'll just read it out to you, okay? But try to follow along. Is a tool to identify, confront, and raise awareness about anti-Semitism as it manifests in countries around the world today. It includes a preamble definition and a set of 15 guidelines that provide detailed guidance for those seeking to recognize anti-Semitism in order to craft responses. It was developed by a group of scholars in the field of Holocaust history, Jewish studies, and Middle East studies to meet what has become a growing challenge, providing clear guidance to identify and fight anti-Semitism while protecting free expression. Initially signed by 210 scholars, it now has around 370 signatories. Now, there are competing definitions, but I specifically chose this one because it separates out criticism from Israel and criticism of Jews as a whole, right? It separates these things in a way that I think that is important to do because not all criticism of Israel is obviously not anti-Semitic, right? But it sometimes can be, as we've seen. But here we go. We, the Understein, present the Jerusalem Declaration on Anti-Semitism, the product of an initiative that originated in Jerusalem. We include in our numbers international scholars working in anti-Semitism studies in related fields, including Jewish, Holocaust, Israel, Palestine, and Middle East studies. The text of the declaration has benefited from consultation with legal scholars and members of civil society, inspired by the 1948 Universal Declaration on Human Rights, the 1969 Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Radical Discrimination, the 2000 Declaration of the Stockholm International Forum on the Holocaust, and the 2005 United Nations Resolution on Holocaust Remembrance. We hold that while anti-Semitism has certain distinctive features, the fight against it is inseparable from the overall fight against all forms of racial, ethnic, cultural, religious, and gender discrimination. And we can go through there, blah, 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 blah. Definition. Anti-Semitism is discrimination, prejudice, hostility, or violence against Jews as Jews, or Jewish institutions as Jewish. Guidelines, general. It is racist to essentialize, treat a character trait as inherent, or to make sweeping negative generalizations about a given population. What is true of racism in general is true of anti-Semitism in particular. What is particular in classic anti-Semitism is the idea that Jews are linked to the forces of evil. This stands at the core of many anti-Jewish fantasies, such as the idea of a Jewish conspiracy in which the Jews possess hidden power that they use to promote their collective agenda at the expense of other people. This linkage between Jews and evil continues in the present in the fantasy that the Jews control governments with a hidden hand, that they own the banks, control the media, act as a state within a state, and are responsible for spreading disease such as COVID-19. All these features can be instrumentalized by different and even antagonistic political causes. Anti-Semitism can be manifested in words, visual images, and deeds. Examples of anti-Semitic words include utterances that all Jews are wealthy, inherently stingy, or unpatriotic. In anti-Semitic caricatures, Jews are often depicted as grotesque with big noses and associated with wealth. Examples of anti-Semitic deeds are assaulting someone because she or he is Jewish, attacking a synagogue, daubing swastikas on Jewish graves, or refusing to hire or promote people because they are Jewish. Anti-Semitism can be direct or indirect, explicit or coded. For example, the Rothschilds control the world is a coded statement about the alleged power of the Jews over banks and international finance. Similarly, portraying Israel as the ultimate evil or grossly exaggerating its actual influence can be a coded way of racializing and stigmatizing Jews. In many cases, identifying and coding speech is a matter of context and judgment, taking account of these guidelines. Denying or minimizing the Holocaust by claiming that deliberate Nazi genocide of the Jews did not take place, or that there were no extermination camps or gas chambers, or that the number of victims was a fraction of the actual total, is anti-Semitic. B. Israel and Palestine. Examples that, on the face of it, are anti-Semitic. 6. Applying the symbols, images, and negative stereotypes of classical anti-Semitism to the state of Israel. 7. Holding Jews collectively responsible for Israel's conduct, or treating Jews, simply because they are Jewish, as agents of Israel. 8. Requiring people, because they are Jewish, publicly to condemn Israel or Zionism, for example, at a political meeting. 9. Assuming that non-Israeli Jews, simply because they are Jews, are necessarily more loyal to Israel than to their own countries. 10. Denying the rights of Jews in the state of Israel to exist and flourish, collectively and individually, as Jews, in accordance with the principle of equality. Again, the article does like 4 out of 5 of these, right? It's insane. It's insane, okay? Israel and Palestine examples that, on the face of it, are not anti-Semitic, whether or not one approves of the view or action. 11. Supporting the Palestinian demand for justice and the full grant of their political, national, civil, and human rights as encapsulated in international law. 12. Criticizing or opposing Zionism as a form of nationalism, or arguing for a variety of constitutional arrangements for Jews and Palestinians in the area between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean. It is not anti-Semitic to support arrangements that accord a full equality to all inhabitants between the river and sea, whether in 2 states, a binational state, unitary democratic state, federal state, or in whatever form. Evidence-based criticism of Israel as a state. This includes its institutions and founding principles. It also includes its policies and practices, domestic and abroad, such as the conduct of Israel in the West Bank and Gaza, the role Israel plays in the region, or any other way in which, as a state, it influences events in the world. It is not anti-Semitic to point out systemic racial discrimination. In general, the same norms of debate that apply to other states and to other conflicts over national self-determination apply in the case of Israel and Palestine. Thus, even if contentious, it is not anti-Semitic in and of itself to compare Israel to other historical cases, including settler colonialism or apartheid. 14. Boycott, divestment, and sanctions are commonplace, nonviolent forms of political protest against states. In the Israeli case, they are not, in and of themselves, anti-Semitic. 15. Political speech does not have to be measured, proportioned, tempered, or reasonable to be protected under Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights or Article 10 of the European Convention on Human Rights and other human rights instruments. Criticism that some may see as excessive or contentious or as reflecting a double standard is not in and of itself anti-Semitic. In general, the line between anti-Semitic and non-anti-Semitic speech is different from the line between unreasonable and reasonable speech. And I agree with this, right? I don't think that someone who comes in and criticizes Israel, right, who calls it an apartheid state, who thinks that Israel is an ethno-state and needs to change or needs to even be eliminated, is necessarily anti-Semitic. My issue comes when you are specifically only calling out Israel and no other. When you focus the full attention you have on Israel and no other, and that you ignore, right, violence or excuse violence or hate against Jews everywhere globally because Israel is a bad guy, right? And Israel has done bad things. Like, this is a common thing, right, that we see. And one of the most insidious things that I've seen in this space is so many people hiding behind, oh, it's not anti-Semitism, it's just anti-Zionism. I'm just critical of Israel, bro. And meanwhile, what's the criticism, right, that you're looking at? That all Jews everywhere are demonic unless they condemn Israel, they condemn America, and they praise October 7th, the Al-Aqsa flood, as a miracle, and praise Hamas, right? That is anti-Semitic, right? Again, generalizing an entire group and putting collective responsibility on that group in a way you wouldn't with other groups, right? Anti-Semitic, man. It's just really, really clear. Let's keep reading some of these super chats. I got a couple more. $5. Would you say the answer to your question was promised to you 2,000 years ago? It was promised to me 2 minutes ago. Well, 2 minutes before I asked it, right? I asked the question, and I want you to notice this, gang. Like, he didn't answer. He refused to answer. He said he was going to answer. He didn't answer. He didn't answer the question, right? And he refused to the whole debate. Ask yourself why. Ask yourself why. $20 from Morally Neutral. Dooby is the worst. Thank you for the $20. $10 from Feder Methodist. I've said for decades that Jews unite people. Anti-Semitism is the last bastion of acceptable racism in some moronic circles on the left and the right. Alhamdulillah, or whatever. Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate your $10. Whick, did you see the Iran-U.S. ceasefire and Strait reopened? No. Link me. Give me a link. Give me a link. Also, hey, Jebtan, if you're watching this still, okay, why are you running from me, bro? You wanted to discuss whether or not not Jews, whether or not Democrats support what was it? Voter ID laws? Yeah, why are you running, bro? Come backstage. Come on in. Let's try it out. But link me the treaty. I want to see it. First of all, I'm glad that we didn't do a genocide in Iran. That's good. I hope there is a treaty, and I hope it holds. But I want to see it. People say a lot of things online. Okay. Frozen Knight says, I have a good friend whose family lives in one of the most progressive towns in New England. His wife is Jewish, and they had brought their daughter up that way. She was bullied at 12 years old to the point she was hospitalized for mental depression. It wasn't too many years ago. I could never think that type of hate could be shown in that community. Crazy. Y'all, also, Kinetic Paw says, Jebtan thinking that California wouldn't pass for redistricting. Yeah, Jebtan's not really right a lot. In fact, if Jebtan says something, you can usually pick the opposite of it, and you'll be correct more often than you're not. He's not always wrong. There's sometimes where I absolutely agree with what Jebtan has to say. But yeah. Let's see what else. That might be what I got for you, gang. That might be it. Yeah. So just to be clear, the final score was 74% agreed with Whick, and 26% agreed with Dooby. Fair enough. Thank you for being here, gang. What do we got coming up? Nothing tomorrow. Tomorrow's my break day, okay? Thursday, however. Thursday. You know what we're doing Thursday? We're having Destiny. We're having Mr. Mooten. We're having Dan, okay? And they're going to be debating Soy Pill. They're going to be debating Ryan Getty. And they're going to be debating Marlowe. The Hassan question. What should Democrats, liberals, do about Hassan? How should they treat him? How should they interact with him, right? Should be a good discussion. Hassan slop. Yes! Kinda. But it is an important question. I'll take callers. Hey, I didn't see you guys back there. What's up?
Oh, sorry. I just have a quick question about a comparison as to whether you think it would be Islamophobic to not allow or have the same position of condemning Islam as a whole for like an example being like the Islamic rape gangs.
Hold on, just real quick. Why are people saying it's my birthday? It's not my birthday. Did I say it was my birthday?
Tomorrow.
It's not my birthday.
Today, right? I
No,
thought
my
you said
birthday is not today. Did I say it
tomorrow.
was?
I thought you said it was tomorrow. Is that wrong?
My break day.
Break day. Yeah, we
Yes.
heard birthday.
No, break day. I said it was my break day. Not my birthday. I thought I said, did I say birthday? I meant break day. Break day. Hold on. You guys heard it as birthday? You all heard birthday? No, break day, bros. My day off. It's my break day. Jesus, hold on. I am sorry and I apologize if you, did I say, now I'm going to have to roll back the tape. Give me the clip, gang. Give me the clip. Yeah, it was my break day.
Yeah,
It's my
that's all
day
I
off.
had.
So, where'd he go? I was going to answer his question. Oh, there he is. Sorry about that. I just needed to correct some misinformation. Okay, so ask your question.
That was the only question I had.
So can you repeat it?
So would you say that it's Islamophobic to not like the people that condemn Islam as a whole, or the people that are a part of Islam that don't like actively like condemn like as an example the rape gangs that were like kind of like
Yes, I think
some
it would be Islamophobic. If I understand your question correctly, it would
yeah.
be Islamophobic to call on a random Muslim man, right, who lives in Kentucky, to condemn the actions of Muslims that happened in Iran. That would be Islamophobia.
Okay, well thank you.
Okay, bye. Hello.
Wait, I was just talking to Dooby.
Oh, okay. What's up? Do you have anything for me?
You did get a little emotional, and you were using I think you're using a different ideological lens from Dooby. You had to catch him in his own words and not from your own. You had to catch him from his perspective and not your perspective.
What do you mean? Well, I don't think there is a, like, in what way? I guess. Elaborate.
Here, let me, hopefully the audio will be. Copy. Is the audio better?
Yes, I can hear you much better now.
All right. Sorry about that. There are a few like very valid disagreements that Dooby may have, and how you were trying to actualize those disagreements, I think was very counterproductive for the entire narrative of if the point was to prove Dooby wrong. To prove someone wrong, you often have to use their own mode or method of analysis against them, and you have to adopt their positions or their philosophical outlook to then show that they're incorrect, or you have to get down to a very long conversation about base moral axioms, and then expand from there.
Okay. Do you think that that is possible to do with someone who isn't being honest or good faith?
I think Doobie was kind of mostly good faith. I think there's a couple things that weren't.
Okay. Go ahead. I disagree, by the way. I think Dooby was being dishonest the entire time.
Oh yeah, no, he was debating against you. Yeah, no, that's like
No,
obviously,
not
yeah.
just debating against me. He was being dishonest, and that's why he lost. To be clear, right? And I think everyone could see this. So I mean,
Well, no, I think you lost because the title was "Yes, All Jews." It's like, yeah,
sure, it was
right,
hard for him to get a W in general, but yeah, he got fucking.
yeah, like alternative
I mean, look,
proposition of
they're gonna call me up in the ICJ, okay, and I'm gonna get like a call from the ICJ for the war crime I just committed today. Like we're talking about genocide. Oof.
war crimes need to be
Right.
based. Anyways,
It wasn't close, but go ahead.
no, I also the alternative position that I don't know who the fuck this is, but that she promotes is inherently anti-Semitic, and with Dobby's own point of view in terms of being complicit in like the Jews are complicit in the Zionism, she is complicit in a very obvious wanting to kill all the Jews ideology. Therefore, she is responsible, and therefore she would also be directly anti-Semitic as well.
Sure.
So
When I
that's would be
tried to
my.
get him to answer the question of would he be okay if I went to a random Muslim or random Palestinian, I should say, at a campus in America or in a state in America in Dearborn, Michigan, or wherever, and I directly held them responsible for the actions of Hamas. There's a reason he refused to answer that question. First of all, it was meeting him on his ideological premise, right? It was testing like his consistency. And there is a reason he just refused to answer that, because that's a kill shot, because he can't answer that honestly, right? If he was to answer that honestly, he would have to admit that he would find it bigoted. And if he did find that bigoted, he would have to find it also bigoted for someone to go to a random Jew and hold them responsible for the actions of Israel. And that's why I think that he wouldn't answer that question or address that at all.
There is a slight difference between complicit and responsible. I would have used the word complicit instead of responsible. They're very similar, but
okay.
Once you get out of democratic nations, they mean something vastly different.
Okay.
Right, because they don't.
I mean,
fair
enough. I mean, like if that was your criticism as a word choice between complicit and responsible, I mean, fair.
Well, I also joined to talk to Dooby, and he pulled me out.
Sorry.
No, that would be my avenue of attack in that case. I've been drinking the entire time too. Excuse me. And then I think if that other one, I think it failed because you're trying to link a direct analogy when it's not exactly analogous, and you have to kind of remove yourself from that. And from doing direct analogies, especially if someone's from a different ideological point, they're not going to share the same. They don't believe that things are going to be similarly analogous to, because you're doing this from a ethnic point, and he's doing it from a blocks of political power point. Do you know what I mean?
I understand what you're saying. I just, again, I don't think he's an honest actor or he was being good faith at all in that conversation. So, I think that, yes, it would work in a good faith conversation. We could get down to brass tacks and we could have, we could look through each other's ideological lens and see consistencies, inconsistencies, right, wrong, correct, incorrect, and we could go through there. But that's not what he was here to do. He has an agenda. He pushes that agenda constantly, and the thing I would point to that says he was not good faith was his refusal to answer the question that I posed multiple times, and every time he would simply dodge while saying he did not dodge. That would be my evidence, and I think it's strong evidence.
I would say it's not a very Socratic debate. I wouldn't.
Sure,
Good
but
faith
there
isn't
are
it?
other methods than the Socratic method to debate and to get to truth.
That's the only good method between
Oh,
two opposing
okay.
parties.
I don't know if I agree with that.
All right, I'm a
Yeah.
I'm a Greek talker, right? I love the Greeks. They're great.
Fair enough. Okay, I'll talk to you later, okay, buddy?
All right, love you, Whick. Bye.
Hello, you're live.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, I did not like that debate. I'll be honest with you.
Go ahead.
I know Dooby's lane is to try to insert Israel all points.
Well, I mean,
think
like,
you
to be
felt
fair, this was a debate over anti-Semitism, and the article mentions Israel several times. It's hard not to mention Israel in this, right? Israel was coming up.
I understand. It's just frustrating to see him get to you, get under your skin.
Well, I don't like
Because
liars.
I understand, but it's just watching him able to navigate that is something that's what he does, which is to be able to say yes, all Jews, literally the article title, while saying that there's a big difference between a Jew and a Zionist. When he kept going back to this poll of what 95%, 90% of Jews are Zionists, therefore we can condemn all of them. Very frustrating. I got to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, it's a frustrating thing to deal with. Like, it's a constant refrain. Like, they just will push it, and they won't actually engage with the substance of arguments. It's crazy. Yeah.
Yes, and it's just and makes me quite annoyed that his goal was for you to yell and scream and kick him out. That was his goal.
Fair enough.
He did accomplish that goal.
I mean, sure, but like, if your goal is to get kicked out of the party, that's a bad goal. And
these people
you can accomplish that goal, but you're still kicked out of the party, right? You still lost.
Well, they're trying to subvert the party, right? This is the same crowd that believes that people like Hassan should be a part of the Democratic Party.
Yeah,
because they're the
we're
ones
gonna talk
activating
about that
the
on
vote.
Thursday, so.
Okay, yeah, but I'm just as an observer, it's very frustrating to see.
Fair enough.
Their exact subversion tactic work perfectly.
Okay, well, fair
That's all
enough.
I'm saying. Yeah.
All good. Anything else?
Yeah. No. Catch you later.
Yeah. Okay, and with that, $2 from Federal Methodist that says, doesn't matter, you're still old. Thank you for the $2. 5 Gift TV memberships from A.K. Batozai. $5 from the Trib One to say, with that being said, the article is obviously anti-Semitic, so Dooby arguing less logical side is the one that has to go further to reach Whick. Fair enough. £5 from Riz What the Fuck to say, can't wait for Thursday. Dan is great on these anti-Semitism issues. You should get into tonight's debate with him about it. I mean, like, I don't think Dan has great stuff for... I don't think he likes Dooby for a variety of reasons. But yeah. I think they have issues. But it should be a fun debate. I don't know, man. I don't think that it's okay to continually I'll just say this. I don't feel any obligation to accept consistent bad faith from someone. At a certain point you just get cut off. At a certain point you've demonstrated your bad faith. I've demonstrated that you are bad faith. We don't really need to do anymore. And yes, I get frustrated by anti-Semitism. I do. Crazy, I know. $2 from the Trib One to say yes, all leftists. Evil imp face. True. Okay. Thanks for being here. I love you all. We will see you Thursday.